Oh, I think last time I saw it is in the participants panel.
Yeah, okay.
But there's no raise hand.
Is that because host cannot raise hand?
Maybe, I think. So shall we try remove the permission of host?
No, it should still be the co-host. Can you, so in the participation window, can you choose collab?
Collab. I just choose collab.
Okay, I don't see it.
Oh, I think Pingsong is here.
Hey. So all right, so you don't see it, right? So how about we do this chat window? Let's just use the chat window. I'm gonna tell people, our presenters, to look at the chat window. So for chairs, to remind them the time. So you just tell them, hey, you have like 2 minutes through the chat window. Is that okay?
You mean let the presenter looks at the chat window? Yeah. I think that's something session chair should do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you should do that.
Okay. So basically it's session chair to choose someone to raise a question and unmute him or her, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know how to do the unmute things as a host? I never done it before.
You go to participants.
Participants?
Yeah, you go to participants, you have a list of participants, right? And if you put your mouse cursor on top of somebody, and you see unmute. See blue button.
Oh, I see. I see.
But
okay.
That is not the only way you can do that. Perhaps the most intuitive way to do that is not through participants, actually. Perhaps you should do it using the screen thumbnail. So we have those thumbnail pictures, right? You see my video. If you put your mouse cursor inside the video, so there's a little button over there too. All right.
Okay, I see. So can we let Pingsong see if he can use that raise hand feature?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Pingsong.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No problem. So can you see raise hand feature in your participants control panel?
Let me check. Yeah. So it's like I need to click the attendees, and then I can see the raising hands.
Okay. So Xindong, do you want to have a quick test or? You are muted.
Oh, quick test of what?
Quick test of like raise hand in your presentation and see if you can see it.
Oh, okay. Hang on a second. Let me share my screen, right? Screen number 2. Okay, now.
Pingsong, can you raise your hand again? So let's see whether Xindong can see it in his presentation.
Okay, like this.
Yeah,
Oh.
I can see that.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, but since you guys are the co-host, you cannot use raise hand feature, right? So, I mean, in order to notify the participants the time, I guess you don't use raise hand. You use chat window.
I see. Okay.
Hey, 早上你好。
哎，行动。
How are you?
Great. Wow, there are lots of people.
Oh, hey, James, how are you?
Hi.
Oh, Sutao, how are you?
Hi,
Cool.
Professor.
Good to see you. All right, I guess we can wait for another couple of minutes and then we can start. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Jing Dong. Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
Yeah, you know what? Let's get it started. All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Xingdong Yan. I am an assistant professor of computer science here at Dartmouth. I would like to welcome you to this Dartmouth Virtual CHI event. So what you're looking at here is a photo of Dartmouth campus in a sunny summer day. For many of you who have not visited us, we are in the beautiful mountains in the state of New Hampshire. So let me see, how do I switch the screen? There we go. So this is the bird eye view of Dartmouth campus. We are surrounded by the mountains and the trees. Super, super beautiful. And this is where we are on a map. And we're on the East Coast, 2 hours away from Boston, 4 hours from New York City. And if you like poutine, or if you like French cuisine on the other side of the border, we're only 3 hours away from Montreal. So of course, today we're super excited to present to you some of those CHI papers Dartmouth HCI community has participated in. So we have presenters from Dartmouth, from Cornell, National Taiwan University.
Hi, Xingdong.
Hey,
I think when you talk about the map, the summer of Dartmouth, we didn't see anything on the screen. Maybe you have to share it first.
Oh, really? Oh, I forgot to share the screen. I am sorry, folks. So I'll probably do it again.
Perfect.
So, all right, so let me see. All right, so let me see. Isn't this a great example for us to teach usability in HCI? All right, can you guys see me now? See my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so, all right, let me do it again. So this is Dartmouth campus in the summertime, okay? And here we have the bird eye view of Dartmouth campus. And here is the map. So we're on the East Coast, okay? And I would like to welcome you guys again to Dartmouth CHI Virtual CHI event. And as I said, we have presenters from Dartmouth, we have presenters from Cornell, National Taiwan University, and the City University of Hong Kong. So this is a great set of collaborative work, with each paper has at least one author from Dartmouth, either from computer science department or engineering, scope engineering. So you know what, before we start to talk, I would like to do a bit of warm up for us, okay? So I'm thinking about playing a game together. So here's how we're gonna play the game. So I'm gonna show you a number that is related to one interesting fact about Dartmouth or this event. And I want you to tell me what that number means. Okay, I'm gonna say it again. So I'm gonna show you a number that is related to one interesting fact about Dartmouth or this event. And you guys tell me what that number means. For Dartmouth folks, if you know the answer, don't say it. Okay, so, and when you say the answer, please do not forget to unmute your microphone. You can use the space bar. You can press the space bar, temporarily unmute your microphone, and just release it. You'll be back on mute. Okay, it's like a walkie-talkie type of mechanism. All right, are we ready to start? All right, so the first number is 1964. Anybody knows what this number means? Feel free to unmute your microphone.
Can we cheat by Googling it?
Go ahead.
Jingdong, I think it's when England win the World Cup football, soccer.
Is that true? We can double check. But that is not the answer I prepared for you. That might be true. So anybody knows who the what the answer is? 1964. Okay, so let me give you some hint. That is something related to computer science, computer programming. All right, let me tell you. So this is the year where basic programming language was created by professors John Camney and Tom Kurz. And John was the professor at the math department at the time, and later served as the president of the college from 1970 to 1981. So what you're looking at here in the image, the person standing on the left side of the image is John Camney. So if you come to Dartmouth, we have a Camney Hall named after the Professor Camney. And if you drive at least from the south side of the town on Route 120, you will see what appears to be the first historical highway marker, as shown here in the photo, that honors the innovation of basic language. So if we read the title, you'll see something related to human-computer interaction community. It says BASIC, that is the first user-friendly computer programming language. That's super cool. Come and visit us, stop by this marker to take a picture. So the next, I'm gonna show you another interesting fact about Dartmouth that is related to computer science department. So Introduction to Algorithms. This is a book I guess many of us have used in our undergraduate education, or maybe you're using this book to teach computer algorithm. And my colleague Tom Corman is one of the main authors of this book. And his office is just right across the hallway. So we're neighbors. When I got my office, I was super excited to be sitting right beside Tom Corman's office. All right, so that's something interesting about CS. Of course, we have wonderful, fantastic faculties at CS department. Check out the website, okay? So the next, I'm going to tell you something cool about Sayre School of Engineering. So this is Professor Eric Forsam, who is the developer of CMOS image sensor. And that is something I believe everybody has in your smartphone. We take photos, we take selfies, right? Super, super cool. So now here we have the next question. We have this number, 1956. Anybody can tell what does that number mean?
Is that when artificial intelligence was first created at Dartmouth?
That is the correct answer. That's right. So this is the year in which Dartmouth's Artificial Intelligence Conference was held. And that is the conference defined basically artificial intelligence as a field, right? So I guess AI is perhaps the hottest field today in computer science. I really want to say, but all right, that's super cool. And now you know what is the event related to this number, 1956. Now I want you to look at this number 6. Anybody tell me what this number means? I can give it a bit of a hint. So this number is related to this event, not a history of Dartmouth. Yeah, this one's pretty hard, actually. This one is really, really hard. All right, let me tell you the answer. So that is the number. That actual number means that this time at ACM CHI 2020, we have papers from 6 Dartmouth faculty from engineering, advanced learning, and computer science. And here we are. We have Elizabeth Smyrny, we have Padger Bumford Taylor, they're from Sayre School of Engineering. We have Michael Gausward from Advanced Learning. We have Andrew Campbell, Shato, and me. We're from Computer Science. So how about, are we here? Everybody's here. Can we say something about ourselves and in our research? And as a big part of this event is to let people from outside Dartmouth to know our community. Let me take a quick peek at the Zoom window, see if we're here. Yes, everybody is here. Or why don't you just make some noise? I know, Andrew, you're here. Elizabeth, are you here?
I'm here, yeah.
Nice. Nice. Petra, are you here? Michael? Shah? All right, yeah. You know what? Let's just do an introduction of ourselves for those of us who are here. So I can start, actually. I can start. So as I said, my name is Xingdong Yan. I go by XD. I'm from Computer Science Department. And my research in human-computer interaction focuses on the design, development, and evaluation of novel interactive systems for smart everyday things. And we're talking about the garments, accessories, appliances, and furniture, and many more. So I'd also investigated prototyping tools to help broaden the participation of research activities in my field for people without a strong background in electronics, sensors, and actuators, which is kind of true for a lot of CS folks, right? So now I also developed this new research agenda in which I investigate assistive systems to facilitate information tasks and STEM education for people with visual impairments. So yeah, that's about me. Who wants to go next? Elizabeth, you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Before introducing myself, I just want to first say a huge thanks to XD for organizing this event. It's a real thrill to see HCI growing at Dartmouth, and especially as a new person joining the college. It's fantastic to have this opportunity to connect with you all, and there's so many of you. So I'm Liz Murnane. I do research in HCI, of course, human-centered design, largely applied to societal challenges in areas like health, education, sustainability. I'm currently finishing up my postdoc at Stanford and the HCI group and starting officially very shortly as a new assistant professor at Thayer, where I direct the Empower research group. In our lab, we engineer and evaluate interactive tools that empower people in individually and collectively capturing and making sense of and acting upon information from personal health data to environmental impacts of manufactured product components, again, working across a range of well-being indicators. And And so currently the lab is comprised of me and CHI, who I think will be joining if she's not already here, my PhD student and innovation fellow, who I've had the pleasure of advising during my deferral over the last year. But we are a growing lab, and so always looking for new students and to make interdisciplinary connections. So feel free to reach out anytime. So thanks again, and it's great to be here.
Cool. Andrew, do you want to go next?
Sure. Apologies, I was just eating my late breakfast here, so but it was a healthy one, yogurt and granola. I tend to have a vision for research, but I end up doing what my students want to do. I try to convince them to work on things that I like, but inevitably they work on things they like to do, and so I end up doing what they like to do. I've been focused pretty much last several years on looking at sensors and particularly looking at sensors in mobile devices, phones, with an idea of trying to get insights into human dynamics, so behaviors, contextual information around people. And of course, today, that there's so much data available from mobile devices. And what particularly interested me a number of years ago was there was a lot of work done in sort of the HCI community to try on this area of activity recognition, right? A mobile device knowing what you're physically doing. And that was actually really nailed very well by the community and then industry. And then the next stage really was to try to get at psychological state. So could you use mobile sensing devices to infer psychological state? And that's really a big grand challenge, sort of still a big open question in CHI, in UbiComp, in a number of different conferences and communities. So I've been with a number of other people, not just me at Dartmouth, but a number of other people looking into this sort of field of trying to get to psychological state. And probably one of the most coolest things I've got to do recently, and I'm not sure if Mikio Abuchi is on the call here, is to connect. I'm working with neuroscientists actually, and we've sort of connected data from your phone about your behavior and brain imaging. So that was a really exciting new result that we got, which is connecting sort of like everyday mobile sensing state to neural connectivity. So that's my research, and it's great to particularly see Liz, who's going to be new faculty at Dartmouth. We're all so super excited that you're joining, Liz. I don't know how Thea did it, but well done, Thea.
You have to find
but anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Andrew has received numerous awards, Test of Time awards, Mobisis.
That means I'm old, folks. That's what XD's saying. I'm an old fart now. Yeah, thanks.
That's not what I said.
I'm only kidding, man. Pull in your leg.
So now let's see somebody who has won almost every single award that I know, but who is arguably young. We have Xia. So Xia, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Xia. I'm an associate professor at computer science. So my research is in mobile computing. Actually, during my PhD, I worked on wireless networking and the measurements. And interestingly, after joining Dartmouth in 2013, I started to work on something very different. And I was drawn into HCI partly because of XD. So we worked together on multiple projects on extending using light for enabling new interaction interfaces and also improving the energy efficiency of gesture recognition systems. And recently we worked together on soft electronics, or the use of fabrics for the next generation user interaction. So I think today we'll have a talk about how to use a single thread to locate the touch. So we'll hear more about it today. But I'm very excited to see the growing community, HCI community at Dartmouth. And also thanks XD for putting together the program and having everyone here together.
Thank you. So I see Petra here.
Yes, I'm here.
You want to say something?
Sure. Yeah, I also want to start by thanking you for organizing this fantastic, amazing event. And I want to point out that I did put up the background I was supposed to put up. Many of you did not. So by myself, so I'm a professor of engineering at the Thayer School of Engineering, but I'm actually a mathematician by training. So I was a mathematician in my previous life and a professor of mathematics and all that. And I won't bore you with my mathematics research. What I work on mostly now at Thayer is research into education, into how to better and more effectively educate a broader number of students. So how to effectively reach a broader group of students. And so I teach a programming class, for example, and as part of that class, we've developed a coding interface. It's a C programming class, an in-browser C programming interface that gives us a lot of data. And so we work on analyzing that data, coding data. We have click by click coding data that helps us hopefully eventually analyze and detect in week 1 which students might need extra support from us. And as part of that, also a collaboration started with Remy Chirac, who's also here somewhere on this hall. There he is. Hey. And we ended up, with the help of many, many others, we have a fantastic team. I don't see them here necessarily, so I'm not going to mention them right now. They will be mentioned in our talk. We started teaching a series of MOOCs on C programming. So it's actually a professional certificate on the edX platform on C programming, 7 courses altogether, C programming with Linux. And as part of that, we are doing some, we have so many students in there that it's very easy to do some A/B testing. So we present certain content to one group and other content to another group, and we can then analyze what the effect is on retention, gender-based, or many other criteria. And that's what we'll be talking about today. And we have worked on this with the help of some fantastic researchers from Stanford. And I'm not sure who's here. Is Renee here? I think Renee is here and Andy might be here. So we've worked with some fantastic researchers who will also be presenting our presentation today.
Cool, fantastic. Is Michael here?
You know what? He's on parental leave.
Ah, I see. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna start to share my screen and keep going. All right. So everybody can see my screen, right? All right. So, and oh, here we go. Yeah. So as you know, as a faculty, really, we didn't do much. And hope Andrew, you guys agree with me. That is really our students and the co-authors, especially the lead author who are the presenter today, who actually did all the hard work. So I really want to give a round of applause to all of our co-authors whose name are here listed in this slide. All right, so looks like we're running a bit late on time, and I'm not gonna, I'm going to stop this game. So here, just gonna tell you the answer. So 10 means that this time we have 10 papers, but we have we're gonna present 9 of them. The lead author of one of this paper, Justin, is overcommitted, unfortunately, so he will not be join us. But we have the paper listed on our event webpage for you to read along with all the other papers and videos. All of these are super cool paper. And here, this number means that we have 16 minutes for each talk, and we have 3 minutes for Q&A. And between sessions, we have 5 minutes break. And if you're a presenter who presents in this session, please stay because people may have additional questions for you. So 3 minutes Q&A right after each talk. I know it's a little bit short, so so we have this additional 5 minutes Q&A during the break. Okay, so for those of you who didn't get an opportunity to ask the authors and presenters during the talk or right after the talk, please also stay during the break. Right, so a little of this policy thing I'm gonna probably skip, but one thing I think is really important. 2 things actually is really important in terms of engagement. Please turn on your camera as much as possible because this will create a much better engaging experience. We would love to see your face. We would love to see your body language. This is HCI, right? We know all sorts of stuff, right? And during the talk, if you have any question, please post it on the chat window anytime. Okay, no restriction at all. Post it anytime. So we want to, we want to see your comments. We want to see your questions, even though we may not be able to answer all of them. But you know who we are. You know who the presenters are. Feel free to send them an email after this event. Feel free to tweet them. Okay. All right. So that's about it. So let's get started. I'm gonna stop sharing my video. And let the first chair to chair the session. Is that you, Gerard?
Yeah, thanks, Xindong. So hello, everyone. My name is Gerard Xu. I'm a second-year PhD student from X Discovery Lab at Dartmouth College, advised by Xindong Yang. And let's begin our first session, which is about sensing. So we will have 2 papers in this session. So the first paper will be Fabricio, touchless gestural input on interactive fabrics. From this paper is from Teyan Wu, Shu Tongqi, Junchi Chen, Mu Jieshang, Jun Gong, and Xindong Yang from Dartmouth College, and Teddy Sayed from Microsoft Research. Let's welcome the presenter, Teyan Wu, to bring us this paper.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dartmouth. Wu. I'm a second-year PhD student from X Discovery Lab. Thanks, Gerard, for introducing. And today, I want to talk about Fabricio, which enables touchless gesture input on interactive fabric. This work was done in collaboration with my labmate, Jun, as well as my mentors and advisor, Teddy and Xindong, in addition to undergrad research interns, Sutong, Jun, and Mu Jie. Before talking about the motivations and the related work, I want to quickly show you what Fabricio is. So the Fabricio is a touchless gesture sensing technique that was developed for interactive fabric. It can be applied to the fabric of objects to do things like controlling a smartphone through a pen, or a TV through a fabric armrest. Fabricio uses a pair of loop antennas made of conductive thread to recognize touchless gestures based on the Doppler effect. Now, I will show you a real-time demo video. With our technique, we can sense a different micro gesture, such as using thumb to draw a track mark, and a finger being Rubik. And we can also detect different hand motion gesture, such as hand pulling up, or the hand pushing down. I will discuss the detail how we implement it later. But before that, I want to talk about the motivation. Fabric can be seen in every part of our daily life, such as in clothing and fashions, furniture and decoration, as well as toys and bags. As many objects around us are made of or covered by fabric, a lot of its existing work has looked into bringing activity into the fabric. One of the most well-known examples is the Project Cuff from Google. It enables touch-based gestures that are sensed on the cuff of the Levi's jacket, which allows the input to be more non-obtrusive and available at any time. Today, however, I want to show you some interactions on fabric that go beyond just touch. What I mean by this is that a user doesn't need to make contact with the fabric to interact with it. Imagine that your hands are dirty and you want to change the channel on TV without touching the remote control. With Fabricio, we can allow you to use media interactions such as swiping and push down above the armrest to remotely control the TV. And imagine clothing such as pants detecting media gesture. You can perform subtle and non-obtrusive media gesture to interact with the smartphone, even in conversation. And what we're looking at in this video is a backpack with a strap that can detect media gesture. As you can see, a user can swipe near a strap to play music and perform circular gesture to listen to the last text message. So far, I've shown some examples that are enabled by our techniques. So next, I want to explain how it works. So the fabric shield uses a Doppler radar sensor that is made of a transmitting antenna and a receiving antenna to sense the motion of a gesture. When a gesture comes within a radiating electrical field of the transmitting antenna, a frequency shift induced by the Doppler effect can be sensed by the receiving antenna, which then generate a motion signal for gesture recognition. Next, let's talk about the design of the sensor. First, we need to consider the sensor operating frequency. In principle, as the frequency increases, the shift in the reflected frequencies will be more observable. However, with a higher operating frequency, antennas become much smaller, which means it needs a higher precision level in the fabrication process. For example, if the operating frequency is 10 GHz, the diameter of a loop antenna is around 9 mm. But if the frequency is 60 GHz, the diameter is only 1.5 mm, which makes it very hard to fabricate. So to strike a balance, we choose 10 GHz as our sensor operating frequency. Second, we consider several antenna designs found in the literature. This includes designs such as dipole, loop, patch, and slot. Due to the time limit, I won't dive into the detail about how this antenna can be made on a fabric and the sensitivity of the antennas. But when we consider the balance between the fabrication complexity and the strength of the electric field, we choose the loop antenna in our implementation for both the transmitter and the receiver. And if you are interested in more information, please see our paper for more detail. And the next, we discuss antenna configuration. Configuration in this context means the distance between the transmitting antenna and the receiving antenna. If the antenna are placed too close to each other, the electric field of the transmitter may be interfered with the receiving antenna, thus weakening the signal. Moving the antenna away from each other can solve this problem, but it may also weaken the received signal. So to determine the best configuration for optimizing the antenna sensitivity, we run a simulation test to study 20 distance, ranging from 1 mm to 41 mm with a 2 mm step. The results shown here, the x-axis is the distance and the y-axis is the normalized receiving signal strength. As you can see, the signal strength was strongest when the distance was around 15 and 21 mm. So considering the balance between the signal strength and the sensor size, we choose the 15 mm as our distance in our implementation. So to summarize, our final design includes 2 loop antennas, which had a diameter of 9 mm, and they were placed 15 mm away from each other. Once the sensor design was finalized, we then fabricated it. So we used a hole embroidery sewing machine to stitch the antenna. And here is the video show how it works. And then we made our customized sensing board, comprised of a data collection board with a Bluetooth low energy module for data transmission, and a Doppler radar sensor board, which was modified from the HV100 Doppler radar motion detector. And I'm going to discuss how we accomplish real-time gesture recognition on fabric. When a gesture is performed above the sensor reports the motion signal of the gesture. Then we extract 480 features based on our observation and initial test. The features are across frequency domain and time domains. After the feature vector is packed, we feed it into the random forest model, and then we use the output as our prediction result. So to revisit, here are the video I showed earlier in the presentations. In total, fabric shield can recognize 10 different media gesture plus 1 touch gesture. And next, I will show you 5 more gesture to build on the 4 I already showed you. The detect gesture name will be shown on the top, and then the low motion signal will be shown on the bottom. So you can see the motion gesture, such as the finger click and the sound rectangle, and a sound circle can be real-time detected. And hand motion gesture, such as circle gesture and the swipe gesture can also be recognized. So to validate the system accuracy and robustness, we run a 10-participant user study. Each participant was asked to perform 10 touchless gesture plus 1 touch gesture above the sensor. And there are 3 sessions. Between sessions, there was a 10-minute break. In each session, each gesture was repeated for 10 times. As a result, within user accuracy achieved 92.8%. The major source of error was the confusion between the finger gesture with similar motions. For example, kick, thumb slide, and the soundtrack account for the most misclassification, as they all had 2 sharp turns in the motion trajectory. Finally, the overall cross-user accuracy is already only 65.5% for 11 gesture, which indicates the user performed gesture differently. However, if we remove some easily confusing gesture, the overall accuracy can reach 87.6% for the remaining 7 gesture. We see this is an encouraging result. And next, I want to discuss the future work. And first, the sensor reading may be different if the antenna is in motion. For example, if a user is dragging, and the training data acquired in a stationary condition may be insufficient to recognize the gesture because the relative motion between the hand and the sensor has changed. Our next step is to investigate the effect of the sensor motion caused by the different user activities. Second, we want to study the effect of antenna deformation. During our lab study and development of the demo application, we did not observe a noticeable impact on sense performance, if only a small deformation on antennas. However, we expect that a large deformation may eventually cause issues, so we want to study it in the future. Third, currently touchless gestures are required to be performed above the sensor. However, some application may be benefit from extended availability from gesture at any location on fabric. So our future work will continue in this direction. And the radar technology has found their ways in many HCI applications, such as object recognition for tangible intentions, and the activity sensing for context-aware applications. Many of these technologies had great potentials on data object, cover, or made of interactive fabric. We will explore ways that can allow us to enable these novel interactions through ubiquitous textile antenna. And finally, I would like to conclude our work with 3 take-home messages. First, we present a touchless gesture sensing technique for interactive fabric that uses the Dartmourh effect. Second, we conduct a study evaluating the accuracies of our sensing technique. Third, we demonstrate several applications with the unique interaction enabled by our technique. And thanks everyone for listening. That's all I want to share today. I'm happy to answer any question.
Thanks Tuyen for sharing this paper with us. So we will have our first Q&A session. If you have any questions, please use Zoom's raise hand features in the participants control panel, so I can select you. If you are selected, please remember to unmute your microphone and name your give us your name and affiliation first. Thanks. Okay, so Tianxin.
Hi, my name is Tianxin. I'm from UMass Amherst. So quick questions. Like how do you compare your technique with Project Solid from Google? Because I think both systems leverage RF signals and Doppler effect to enable wireless sensing gestures or gesture sensing. Thanks.
Yeah, it is a good question. Yes, the Solid also used the Doppler effect to sense the gesture, the touchless gesture. But in our papers, we focus on the how to fabricate the textile antennas and decide the antennas for the fabrication. So for example, if we didn't focus on if we don't care the fabrications, we will not use the loop antenna, right? If we made the antennas on maybe on directly on chip, maybe we will use the patch antenna. But for the fabrication complexity, we choose a loop antenna. So so through our paper, we discuss this very much. So yes, so thanks.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so for the time considerations, we cannot have some, more questions. Please feel free to use the break time during between the session to directly reach the authors for any more questions. Thanks. So next we have the second paper in this session, which is thread sense, locating touch on an extremely thin interactive thread. This paper is from Ping-Sung Gu, Qijia Shao, Teyan Wu, Jun Gong, Ziyan Zhu, Xia Zhou, and Xindong Yang, all from Dartmouth College. Let's welcome presenter Ping-Sung Gu.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ping-Sung Gu from National Taiwan University. Thanks, sir, for introducing me. So today I'll be presenting thread sense. This work was done during my internship at Dartmouth, where I was in collaboration with Qijia, Deyan, Jun, Ziyan, and was advised by Xia Zhou and Xindong Yang. So thread sense is a new sensing technique for one-dimensional touch input that works on an interactive thread. It can locate up to 2 concurrent touches based on the principle of impedance sensing. Our motivation is that we want to bring interactivities to thin objects in our daily life, such as wirecraft, embroideries, headphones, and even a hair-like sensor that can hide in the hairbreadths. So this work builds and expands upon prior work in a number of domains, including capacitive and impedance sensing and one-dimensional touch input on core objects. For example, core input integrates stretch sensor, rotary encoder, and conductive thread into a core-based prototype, which enables sensing capabilities of how hard it is being pulled, how much it is being twisted, and where it is touched. And our core enhances cords with movable sliders, control, and touch input capabilities. They also combine AR glasses to visually extend the R-core controls. Another work, IOBRAD creates an interactive textile cord with embedded sensing and visual feedback that can be integrated into headphones or drawstrings on garments. It can sense proximity, touch, and twist through a spiraling, repeating braiding topology. Comparing with previous works, thread sense has the advantage that it works on very thin threads with a simple structure, which is a line of resistive material and cannot be supported by the existing method. And our method is unique in that it locates touches based on the mathematical model describing the change in the impedance of the thread in relation to touch locations. Unlike many of the existing techniques using impedance sensing, our system does not need to be trained and only requires a simple calibration before uses. To briefly explain our sensing principle, let's first consider an evenly distributed resistive thread with both ends connected to an impedance sensor. So by applying the voltage to the thread, the impedance sensor can calculate the initial thread impedance as the ratio of voltage drop and the electric current. When the finger touches the thread, it shunts a small amount of current to the ground, which increases the measured impedance. Take a closer look at the new circuit diagram. We can divide the initial thread impedance into 2 parts, ZH and ZL, respect to the touch location. And we use ZT to represent the shunting impedance from the touching finger to the ground. Now we have a circuit diagram describing a touch event. The express the changed impedance, we utilize a technique called star to delta transformation to simplify the circuit diagram. After applying the transformation, the star network of a touch event on the left-hand side turns into the equivalent delta network on the right-hand side. Now the thread impedance after touch can be estimated as ZHL, which is marked with the blue line. Note that the two impedance marked with red dotted lines won't affect the measured impedance and can be ignored. Based on the formula, we can express the impedance change in terms of ZH, ZT, and ZL. The value of ZH and ZL depends on the touch location. Here we can use a location coefficient, alpha, with a value between 0 and 1 to represent the touch location on the thread. But we still need to know the value of ZT to calculate ZHL. Indeed, we can calculate its value beforehand with the one-touch calibration process. By asking the user to touch on a predefined position, such as the middle of the thread, ZT can be inferred based on the same transformation formula. Now we have the relation between ZHL and the touch location coefficient alpha. This means the measured impedance of the user touching the thread can be used to locate the touch event. We can also track a two-touch event by performing the star to delta transformation twice. This is the first transformation, where we turn the delta network into the star network. And the second transformation from star to delta. So with a more complicated calculation, we're able to get the equation describing the relation of two touch locations and the measured impedance. To evaluate our approach, we developed a proof of concept prototype using an FDM 3D printer and off-the-shelf hardware and software. So our system consists of two parts, the impedance sensing board and the resistive thread. The main component of our sensing board is an impedance analyzer chip. We utilize a thread frequency method to return the real and imaginary parts of the measured impedance. For the thread part, we found through tests that total resistances between 500 kilo ohms and 1 mega ohms work the best for our impedance analyzer chip. Unfortunately, we cannot find any commercial product that qualifies our need. Therefore, we had to create our proof of concept prototype using an FDM 3D printer and conductive filament. It has a thickness less than 0.4 millimeter, which is mainly limited by the 3D printer. To measure the accuracy of our sensing approach, we conducted system evaluations for both one touch and two concurrent touches. As the sensor is extremely thin and bendable, keeping it straight is important for us to accurately record the ground truth. For the study only, we printed the sensor straight on a supporting structure made of non-conductive material. Prior to the study, the system was calibrated. To evaluate touches using one finger, participants slide their index finger against the sensor, and there's a needle that can point out the touch location. We recruited 10 right-handed participants, and they need to slide their index finger with a 2 millimeter sliding distance and complete the total 92 millimeter sliding distance for 2 times. We used average arrow distance to measure the tracking accuracy of our approach. And we also investigated the effect of calibration. We compared the sensing accuracy while varying the number of touch points used for calibration. The result shows a 6.13 millimeters arrow distance for 1 point calibration. And we were able to reduce the arrow to 4.16 millimeter with 5 calibration points. We think with this level of sensing accuracy, continuous input touch such as sliding is possible, but the filter needs to be used to reduce signal noise. For the touches using 2 fingers, Participants need to clip a 3D printed divider to control the space between the fingers. We ask participants to center the 3 target locations in the middle of the index and middle finger, with the fingers set apart in 5 different distances from each other. Each condition was repeated twice in the experiment. Our result shows an 8.55 millimeter arrow distance across the 3 locations and 5 finger spaces. Now I would like to talk about several conceptual demo applications to showcase DreadSense and highlight various usage scenarios. With DreadSense, a user can hand out the phone during the meeting by naturally touching the hairband and change the phone to mute mode by scratching. Another example is about Wirecrafts. DreadSense enables the wire bookmark, allowing the user to perform continuous touch input to the brightness of ambient light while reading. We also manually solved our stress sensor on an embroidered cushion cover, allowing users to trigger different actions. For example, tapping the first owl stance enables the microphone of the Alexa. Tapping the second owl using 1 finger turns on music. Tapping the same location using 2 fingers plays the news. Swiping on the dotted lines changes the channel. This way, the cushion becomes the user's always available remote control. Now I would like to talk about our future work. The first thing is that we believe the thread can be manufactured using fibers. One possible approach is to coat a fiber thread using conductive ink. Another possibility would be utilizing materials like conductive polycarbonate to create a thread. The challenge is that we need the conductive material to be evenly distributed along the thread, which requires a precise manufacturing process to overcome. From the calibration process, we found that the user's impedance profiles are different. This is primarily due to the difference in their body impedances. So there's possibility of differentiating input from different people. The key challenge lies in the fact that the major impedance is affected by both users' body and the finger touching locations. We plan for future work to investigate methods that can separate these effects for user recognition. With that, I would like to conclude our work with 3 take-home messages. We discuss an approach enabling one-dimensional touch sensing on an interactive thread. Our system utilized a mathematical model describing the change in thread impedance in relation to the touch location. We foresee that DreadSense holds the potential for sensing techniques on extremely thin and soft objects. So that's all of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Vincent, for sharing this paper with us. Please raise your hand in the participants control panel. Okay, I see Yang.
Hello, Yang from CMU. Great work, congrats. So one question I have is, does the pressure of how hard the user press on the thread change the signal? In other words, have you considered maybe contact impedance between the finger and the thread in your modeling? Thank you.
That's a really good question. So yes, we did consider the touch pressure. And so in fact, this would change the impedance a little bit. So in our work, we just evaluate that user touch the thread naturally. So it's like we didn't ask the user to touch it really hard or like touch it gently. And so I think that might be one of the limitations, that if you want to modify the sensor to be accurate for different touch pressure, you might need some more like calibration points or more frequency domain, like more frequency to swap the impedance. They might help for the accuracy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a question for you, Pisong. So I think this is a really interesting sensing principle. And have you ever evaluated when it is bended or deformed or something like this?
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, this is another interesting aspect that we cannot evaluate right now, because so if we let the sensor bend, then we cannot record the ground truths accurately. But you're right that if the sensor is bent, they might also change the touch impedance. So I think for now, if you use the model that is fixed with the shape, you can still like calibrate the touch correctly. But if you let the sensor be bendable, they might induce some like tracking error.
Okay, thank you. So I guess this is for our first session. So we will have 5 minutes break before the next session. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach the audio directory or post your question in the chat channel. Thank you.
All right, since we're quiet, I would like to say something. So for the presenters, please be aware that our session chairs will send you quick messages in terms of timing. And when there's 3 minutes left, our session chair will send a message through the chat window. So keep an eye on it. And yeah, that's about it. Any questions? We have a lot of people here. So Taeyeon, why don't you, you have 3 questions, right? Why don't you tell people what the questions are and what's your answers?
Okay. Actually, there are 5 questions, and I pasted my answers in a document, but I can repeat here. So the first question is that did I test the dual hand gestures, such as within a user or between people? And my answer is no. We didn't. Currently, FabStream didn't support a dual hand gesture. And the second question is he wondering why the signal strength I present in the slides only achieve 1.0 score. So actually, in that simulation, in the simulation, it gives us the voltage vectors, and we normalize the magnitude of the voltage vector for all configurations. So the max value is only 1. And then the third question is about the radiation loss along the transmission lines. So how do we do this? And currently we restrict the length of the transmission lines as the multiple of the half length wavelengths, which can reduce the radiation loss during transmission. And then the fourth question is that, so another question is about why don't put the electronic to be right below the antennas? And have I tried this before? And my answer is yes, we tried it before. And then the signal strength is a little stronger, but not significantly improved. And then the fifth question is basically how do we deactivate or activate the sensor on demand? And my answer is that maybe you can use some gesture for turning on or of the detection. So is there any question more? Or I can or Binson, maybe you can take my mic, and because there are some questions for you. Binson?
Actually, I didn't receive questions, so yeah. Seems like.
I think you might have one question from Youngwoo, if you haven't gotten to that one yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Oh, okay. So it's about the power source. So right now we actually connect our sensor to a computer. So it is supplied by the USB. I think, yeah, that might be one of the future work for a self-sustainable power source, but we didn't, do any research on it yet. Yeah, but it's a great point because if we want the sensor to be portable, we might consider some good power source. Yeah.
So Peng-Song, here's another one for you. I copied it from YouTube.
Oh, work as a matrix. Also, the question is, so can our sensor work as a matrix? Or the thread interfere with each other? So I think the thread sensor, because it's based on the impedance sensing, and if you put different threads together, then would definitely have some effects with each other. So if we want to have multiple thread sensors together, we might need a more robust technique such like machine learning to filter the noise or interference. Yeah, so it's a good question and a good direction for future exploration. And another point would be because we now use one sensor for one thread, so if we want the multiple threads, that means you need a lot of sensors, and that might be another problems. So I think that's about the matrix of thread sensor.
Great, thanks, Peng-Song. So I'll pass it to Josh Davis, who's the chair for the next section.
Thanks, XD. Hi, I'm Josh Urban Davis. I am a graduate student here at Dartmouth. And I would just like to point out to Petra, I did try really hard to have the virtual background, but when I turn on my virtual background, we get an effect. I don't know if you see this on your side, but it looks quite bizarre on my side. And while this is aesthetically fascinating, it might be a little distracting. So I tried, I really did.
Okay.
Okay, great. So thank you for joining me on this session for session 2, Wearables and Smart Things. Our first talk is going to be Zipro, the design and implementation of an interactive zipper from Pinsongku, Zhonggong, Yangwu, Yi Yiwan Tang, Barrett Enns, and Zhendong Yang. So if you are ready, Pingsong, would you like to go ahead and take it away?
Okay, so hello everyone, this is Pinsong again. So I'll presenting my second work, ZPro. So this work was also done in X Discovery Lab, where I was in collaboration with Jin, Deyan, Yixin, Yiwen, and was advised by Barry Ens and Xindong Yang. So ZPro is an interactive zipper that composed of a 3D printed slider and puller. It can replace the slider of a standard size 5 zipper and enables seamless input and sensing, such as the location of the slider, gesture on the puller, and the identity of the zipper user. Zippers are common in a wide variety of objects that we use daily. We can see them on jackets, jeans, purses, and backpacks. Since the zipper and fabric often coexist on objects that we wear in our daily life, the topic has been widely studied, and previous works have tried to enable novel interactions on these daily objects. For example, a recent work, Sensor Snap, integrates low-power sensor nodes into Fabric Snap to enable touch and rotation gesture sensing. Their device can be attached in a time similar to attaching a standard snap fastener. And Project Jacquard from Google proposed novel interactive textiles that can be manufactured using standard weaving technology and equipment. They enable touch gestures based on capacitive sensing by weaving conductive yarn into textiles. In this work, we extend this body of research by bringing interactivity to some of the daily objects that bear zippers. For study, we want to explore the usability of the zipper. So we took a user-centered design approach through an observational study and formative interview to understand the needs of an interactive zipper from the user's perspective. We first brainstormed 11 objects that often have zippers, and then search YouTube using the name of these objects as keywords. Starting with 1299 candidate videos, we filtered out the irrelevant ones and resulted in a total of 444 videos for analysis. They have an average number of views more than 200,000 and an average length of about 10 minutes. By observing the many different ways zippers are used daily, we aim to gain the insights needed to develop a wide range of interactions. We observed several common zipper states and operations and summarized the potential opportunities enabling foreground and background interactions. In addition, we conducted an interview study to improve our understanding of user preferences. 28 participants were recruited in the study, and 4 conditions on different zipper objects were included. For each of the 4 zipper conditions, participants first tried every technique, then report their preference using a 7-point Likert scale. Based on the outcomes of our observation and formative studies, we inferred several sensing requirements needed to enable foreground and background interaction. To demonstrate the feasibility of an interactive zipper, we developed a self-contained prototype to enable some of the interactions suggested by our studies. Here's 2 main parts of our prototype. For the puller part, we aim to enable the sensing of touch input, hand grip type, and user identity. The first 2 layers of the puller include a capacitive touch sensor and a battery. The third layer is a printed circuit board containing the main control unit, Bluetooth radio, and a fingerprint sensor. To sense the location of the slider as well as the slider motion, we installed 2 infrared proximity sensors inside the slider. The sensors were positioned on top of each opposing row of teeth. When the slider traveling along with the zipper teeth, the proximity sensor will return the high and low values. We can therefore count the number of teeth and calculate the traveling distance. We can also detect the moving direction based on the phase difference in the two sensors' signal. So we conducted a series of experiments to evaluate our prototype. For the slider movement, we evaluate the robustness of our system against zipper teeth made of various materials and different colors. This study was carried out with 10 right-handed participants. We saw the zippers on jackets for the participants to wear on and operate the zippers in a vertical direction. We included 3 common teeth variations: metal, coil, and visible, and 2 colors, black and white, that have a wide variance in light reflectivity. The participants were asked to pull the slider to each open or close the zipper with 3 travel distances, and 5 times in each condition. The result shows no error in detecting travel direction, and the average error for each zipper pull is 0.67 millimeter. Interestingly, we found more tracking errors on the white teeth than the black teeth. We believe this is because the white color surface is more reflective, which might lead to higher error of the proximity sensor. For grip gestures and the user identity, we included 2 grip gestures to see if we can distinguish them with our fingerprint sensor. Besides, we want to know if it's possible to recognize the user's identity with the detected fingerprint. As we can see in the picture, the left-hand side gesture is pinching using the tip of the index finger, and the right-hand side gesture is pinching using the side of the index finger. We can see the difference between the fingerprints under these 2 gestures. So we recruited another group of 10 participants for this evaluation. On the day before the study, the ground truth data for user identification was collected with participants performing the 2 grip gestures for 10 times. Participants returned on the test day, repeating each grip gesture on the puller that located near the top, bottom, and middle of the foam zipper of a jacket, with also 10 repetitions. In order to train the model for the grip gestures, we turned the fingerprints into binary images. The data was then used to train the classifier, and we conducted the div-and-now cross validation, where the data from 9 users was combined for training and 1 user's data for testing. The result yielded an average accuracy of 97.7% for grip types. For the user identification, the ground truths of the user's fingerprint were collected on the first day. We then utilized the classifier provided by an open source library, SourceFis, to analyze the result. Here we show the result of the false accept rates and false reject rates against the classification threshold value defined by SourceFis. Depends on the choice of the classification threshold, we iterate all the possible values and choose 26 for our system. We see this setting useful for security-related applications. With our prototype, we were able to develop several demo applications to demonstrate the possibility of zipper-based interaction. So when the user leaves his backpack, Zippo prevents items from being stolen from the backpack by sending a warning message when someone tries to slice the zipper open. If the zipper is left open during the journey home, the system will remind the user to close the zipper. Another example is in a meeting. So if there's a ringing smartphone, the act of pulling out and muting it can add additional distraction. Instead, a swipe gesture on the pocket zipper can provide a subtle alternative to silence the phone. So now I would like to talk about our future work. With our current implementation, our system needs to be detected before washing or changing the battery. Further improvement, including waterproof treatment and adding a power management circuit, can help on these critical issues. Another technical challenge that for future work is to distinguish a user's intentional touches from incidental touches to avoid false positive. It may be useful to explore potential gestures such as a tap to delineate the start of an intentional input sequence to help the zipper differentiate between foreground and background interactions. We also believe that exploring the output of zippers could be one of the possibilities to signal the users. For example, one can add vibro-tactile feedback or adding braking to the system. We leave this aspect for future exploration. So yeah, I would like to conclude our work with 3 take-home messages. We explore the possibilities of interaction with ubiquitous zipper-bearing objects. We build a self-contained prototype, Zippo, to validate the technical feasibility. We demonstrate the unique benefits of an interactive zipper with a set of applications. That's all of my presentations. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's give the speaker a round of applause. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pinsung. So I have some questions here in the chat window. Diniti would like to know, says, awesome work. In order to measure the distance, why do you use an IR proximity sensor instead of a smaller ultrasonic sensor?
Ultrasonic sensor. So yeah, they might be one of the choice because yeah, I think there's many options for the slider motion because I think many of the sensors can do the job, but here we consider that the size of the sensors should be very small and should be available to install in the slider. So that's why we choose the IR sensor in this case.
Great. It looks like Sugata has a question. Really cool work being, does the speed at which the zipper is pulled affect the measurement of the distance?
Sorry, I'm not very clear with the question, so can you ask?
So when they're unzipping or zipping up the zipper, does the speed, if I do it quickly versus very slowly, does that affect the measurement of the distance of the teeth?
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's a good question. So yes, so for now, I think the speed, if you pull the zipper slowly, the accuracy will be very high. But in our studies, we just ask the participants to like pull the zipper in the way they like naturally do. So we just evaluate the normal speed of pulling the zipper, and if you want to like increase the accuracy or like available for like high speed pulling, then you might need to raise the sampling rate for the IR sensor. So I think that can help on the accuracy.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, wonderful. Let's thank the speaker once again. It's always weird to do this in virtual rooms because the applause is very, very quiet. Great, so up next we have exploring eyes-free bezel-initiated swipe on round watches. And this is work brought to us by Huicheng Wang, Yining Zhu, Jinnong Yang, and Ong Bofu. And yes, so if you are here, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Huicheng Wang Tony from the City University of Hong Kong. Today, I'm going to present our work exploring ice-free bezel initiate swipe on round smartwatches. This work was in collaboration with Xingdong Yang from Dartmouth College and my PhD advisor, Qinling Zhu and Hongbo Fu. Before going into details, I just want to quickly introduce what a bezel initiate swipe is. A bezel refers to the physical touch insensitive framework of a device, and bezel initiate swipe is a swiping gesture starting from the bezel toward the touch screen. This gesture is fast, subtle, and natural. Previous work of interaction on the bezel focused on multiple selection, one-handed target aggregation, and quick command activation on smartphones and tablets. And there are some related work on smartwatches, like B2B swipe, adapting bezel to bezel swiping gesture to enrich smartwatch input. And page flip operates with a page flipping gesture for text editing. This work mainly focuses on Square mobile device. And we are more interested in exploring the use of bezel initiate swipe on a round smartwatch, and especially in an ice-free condition. Here, I would like to first define what I mean ice-free. It refers to the interaction without looking at the input space. That is where the interaction takes place. This utilizes human proprioception, that is the sense of self-movement and body position. And today I'm going to show you that a bezel initiate swipe on a round smartwatch is possible and accurate. It can benefit various applications ranging from mobile wearable to VR application. So smartwatch interaction usually requires sequential operation, or sometimes it requires the user to throw a very long item list because the input space is limited. And bezel initiate swipe can increase the input vocabulary of smartwatch without mode switching. On a square watch, the four edges and the corners act as all three available tactile cues. And this can help the user to locate their finger position without looking at the watch. However, on a round smartwatch, due to the lack of corner, and the bezel initiate swipe become more difficult, especially without looking at the screen. So this inspires us to investigate bezel initiate swipe on one smartwatch, which is largely unexplored. To get started, there are many possible layouts. We can divide the circular bezel region into many different number of segments, and we would like to study the effect of different segment sizes. We chose commonly used layout and their subdivision that are this 6 layout with 6, 8, 12, 16, 24, and 32 segments. And we choose the orientation that is commonly used in daily life. Like for the 6 segment layout, we choose the orientation that is used in the Samsung Galaxy Watch. And for the 8 segment layout, we choose the orientation that are the same as the compass direction. And for the 12 segment layout, we choose the orientation because like it looks like the analog clock. with 12 different numbers. So the user may have the idea of like where the segment are located. We also studied their subdivision. So in total, we focus on these 6 layouts. And we first studied the user performance of I3 Bezel initiates wide with this 6 layout. We recruit 12 right-handed participants, and they were asked to select target at different bezel position without looking at the smartwatch. The tasks were shown on a monitor, and cardboard was placed above the participant's hand. This is to ensure that they could not see the smartwatch screen. And during the study, no feedback was given. This is to avoid slowing down the swiping gesture due to visual or audio feedback. And also, this is to avoid influencing the next swipe due to the result of the current swipe. Here is the results so that the accuracy of 6 different layouts. We can see that for the 6 segment layout, it can achieve accuracy around 95%. However, the accuracy decreased gradually to 25% for 32 segment layout. There are significant effects amongst the layout on accuracy, while no significant effect on completion time. What you are looking at is the touch point distribution from all the participants in the previous study. Like the ellipse here show the 95% confident ellipse amongst all the layout. And each touch point indicates the start position of the bezel initiate swipe. From this, we can see that increasing the number of segments, the size of overlapping area increase. This suggests that participants were able to identify the segment location for small segment numbers, while it becomes more difficult with more segments since the segment size becomes smaller. We also analyzed the relative offset, which is the angle difference of the start position to the center of the target segment. A positive value means that the start position is on the right of the target segment center. And a negative value means that the start position is on the left of the target segment center. We can see that for the relative offset of the 6 layout, we observed that the right bezel region was green and the left bezel region was orange. That means the participant tends to start swiping with white shifting, especially on the top right region. And the user tends to start swiping with left shifting, especially on the left region. This behavior could be due to the relative angle between the smartwatch and the input fingers. And this may also be attributed to the result of the handedness. So we may think that like right-handed people and left-handed people may perform like differently and give different results in the relative offset, but this still needs further exploration. So to improve the accuracy on bezel initiate swipe, we consider the detection of bezel initiate swipe from different regions as a classification problem. For example, like for a 6 segment layout, it is a 6-class classification problem. Next, we explore the possibility of improvement with machine learning techniques. We split the touch point data from study 1 into training and testing set, and then train with different machine learning techniques. So here, different learning methods were evaluated, including SVM, KNN, logistic regression, random forest, and baseline method refer to the method that determine the input segment only according to the start position. And it has found that SVM gave significant improvement on 6, 8, 12, and 16 segment layout. We observed that there are significant difference in performance among users in study 1. This suggests that a personal model may make further improvement and could yield better performance over a general model. We then compare these two models through computer simulations. The general model is derived from touchpoint data of study 1, and we collect more data with another 3 participants to divide and study the performance of personal model. So here we conduct our second study to collect more data. We recruit 3 right-handed participants in a 6-day study. And we also ask the user to perform Bezier initial swipe on this 6 layout. And we use the same aperture and procedure as study 1. After this, like we train with we compare the general and personal SVM model. So this figure shows the accuracy between baseline general SVM model and personal SVM model with data from different number of days as training data. We can see that for personal SVM model, like increasing the number of training data is gradually increase the accuracy. And compared with the general SVM model, we can see that the personal SVM model significantly improve their accuracy of 8, 12, 16, and 24 segment layout. Here, I want to demonstrate some application with I3 Bezier initial swipe. First, Bezier initial text entry can allow users to type by swiping from the bezel in a circular keyboard when experienced in an VR environment. And second, with bezel socket, user can swipe from different bezel region to interact with daily life object. For example, to pause a video on a laptop or to reject a phone call. It could be useful in social scenarios. And bezel menu control allow the user to navigate with a circular menu using a Bezier initial swipe to control a printer when wearing a HoloLens. For future work, we would like to study the layout with variable segment sizes. And this is like some segment is larger and some is smaller, which are optimized for the user behavior. And besides, there are more design considerations such as different number of segments and orientation. And for the user study, it is important to investigate the use of Bezier initial swipe in mobile scenario. To conclude, our work is the first work studying I3 Bezier initial swipe on RAN smartwatches. Second, the SVM model significantly improves the accuracy of Bezier initial swipe, especially for personal model. Finally, we believe that I3 Bezier initial swipe on RAN smartwatches potentially benefit various applications. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our co-authors again. And this is all I want to share today. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any question.
All right, great. Let's thank the speaker. So we're running a little behind on time, so maybe we have time for just one question though. Does anyone have a question? Go ahead and just speak up. So it looks like Jingyi, raise your hand, Jingyi, go ahead.
Hi, it's Jingyi. I'm from New York University, advised by Professor Ken Perrin. So I have I was working on some typing project before, and I saw that you can use your smartwatch to do typing, while in VR AR, like you cannot see your hands or you cannot see your watch. I wonder, did you visualize the layout of your round watch in your headset so that people can see where they are, or they just feel like they're doing some kind of swipe gesture so that they can select the characters in the certain place?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Like for the example that I shown, like we do show the circular keyboard in the VR headset, so the user can see it. But for a round smartwatch, we don't have the corner as a tactile cue. So I think even the user can see the layout in the headset, but it only helps them to understand how the layout is look like and where the letter is located. And in this work, I think it is interesting to study can the user really swipe on the region they want to select.
Yeah, I always worry about the accuracy, and also I see that you can only show 3 kind of words in your display or in somewhere. So I wonder, because I know that typing is not the purpose, so you may only give a sample that what you can do with this technology. But if we do want to, definitely there will be more than 3 words sometimes, so that more UI stuff, I guess. So. Yeah, so one thing that I don't know if how accurate it might be, because once I cannot see that, I don't know if you measure it or not, or it's just like a demo scenario. So
I think we're going to have to table this discussion for offline because we're running just a little bit behind. I'm so sorry. But please keep chatting, especially during the breaks. We're going to have a break coming up very, very shortly. Please keep chatting. And, of course, you can reach out to any of our participants through social media or email. Thank you. Thank you so much. Next up, we have bi-tip text, bimanual eyes-free text entry on a fingertip keyboard from Jeju, Deyamon, Jungong, Xingdong Yang, and a whole host of others. I'll let Jir go ahead and introduce his co-authors. So let's welcome Jir, sorry.
Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Jir Xu. I'm a 2nd-year PhD student from X Discovery Lab at Dartmouth College. Today, I will present bi-tip text, a bimanual eyes-free text entry on a fingertip keyboard. This work was done with my lab mates Te Yan and Jun, my PhD advisor Xingdong Yang, and Wei Hao, Dongyang, Jiehui, Sichen, and Jialun, who were undergraduate research interns at our lab. Let's first take a look at how bi-tip text works. With bi-tip text, a user uses 2 thumbs to tap on a split keyboard located on the left and the right index finger. Bi-tip text is an extension of tip text, which originally introduced unimanual fingertip tapping in WIS 19. It is natural, unobtrusive, and can be easily conducted in an eyes-free manner. The speed of tip text is around 11.9 WPM. Inspired by typing on a smartphone, where speed is faster using 2 hands, we thought using both hands for fingertip typing can improve typing speed too. Here, I will briefly talk about why this is the case. In tip text, keys are super small, and they are very close to each other. For example, letter S and H can be easily confused by the system. In bilative text, these two letters are on two different fingertips, and within two separate spatial models, they are no longer going to be confused. Therefore, the input clarity has been significantly improved, and the decoder can be more accurate in predicting target word. Thus, typing speed can be improved. If you are wondering why the keyboard is laid out in such a way, it is something that I will talk about in the next few slides. There are around 67 million possibilities of assigning 26 keys onto two fingertips. So how to pick the appropriate keyboard layout? We propose 3 design considerations to make the layout more suitable for fingertip typing and split keyboard. The first one is learnability. Since QWERTY is the most widely adopted keyboard among the world, we determined that all keys should maintain its relative position in a QWERTY layout. This is critical to eyes-free typing, since users can rely on their existing spatial awareness of key locations during text input. The second one is handedness expectations. Users may have natural expectation of the handedness of keys, resulted from their bimanual typing experience on a virtual or physical keyboard. For example, since letter Q is near the left boundary of the keyboard, user may expect Q to be on the left fingertip. A keyboard layout that highly matches users' handedness expectation is needed so that it can be easily used in eyes-free scenarios. Typing speed is also important. This is our motivation to use both hands. So we organized our design approach into 2 steps. First, we filtered out those candidate keyboard layouts that greatly disobeyed users' handedness expectations. For the remaining ones, we conducted an optimization to look for a speed-optimized keyboard. Let's first talk about collecting users' expectation data for key handedness. To do so, we conducted a user study. 10 participants were involved in this study. They needed to type 80 phrases randomly selected from Mackenzie's test set. We collected handedness information of every letter through capacitive sensors placed on users' 2 index fingertips. Participants were required to finish the task without looking at the fingertip. They were also informed that keys were distributed across 2 index fingers in any way they liked. This is the study result, which describes the natural handedness expectation. The number shown here in each key is the percentage of the corresponding letter typed using the left hand. In this figure, the color of a key is deeper if it is better expected by the users to be typed using the left thumbtip. We can see a very clear consistency of handedness expectation for most keys. For example, letter Q and the letter A are almost expected to be on the left hand, and the letter P and L on the right hand. Note that even Q and A, we don't see 100%. Talking to participants reveals that sometimes participants accidentally choose the letters with another hand. For the letters residing in the middle of the keyboard like V, E, G, H, and Y, handedness expectations are slightly different among different people. We used this result as a filter to get off layouts that greatly disobey users' handedness expectation. After using the filter, candidate layouts are reduced from 67 million to 1,295. Next, we try to find a keyboard that is optimized based on performance. We choose two metrics to optimize our keyboard performance. The first one is word ambiguity, which describes how likely words are going to be confused with others by the decoder on a given keyboard. The second one is movement time, which describes how fast words can be finished tapping on a given keyboard. I will talk about how to calculate word ambiguity score first. We first introduce confusion score between a pair of word A and B. It is defined as the likelihood of a statistical decoder misinterpret target word A as word B. The word ambiguity score is thus defined as the highest pairwise confusion score. For the part of calculating decoder probability, we followed a similar approach in literature. Here is an example of confusion score. The confusion score between word sad, S-A-D, and word wet, W-E-T, could be somehow larger than 0 since they are close to each other and have same order of handedness. However, the confusion score between word sad and out, O-U-T, is 0 since they have different order of handedness. Note that the split keyboard here is intuitively split from the middle for demonstration. It is not our final layout in BiTyp text. Besides the word ambiguity, we also need a predictive model to estimate the movement time of tapping on fingertips. We designed a Fitts law-like experiment to collect data for modeling. This is an example of a study trial. We have targets shown on the screen. The two blue rectangles here represent the left and the right fingertips, and users select each target by tapping on the fingertips based on their natural spatial awareness of target location. The numbers indicate the order in which targets were required to be selected. As you may notice, the first and last target resided on the same fingertip. This is called an return task. 12 participants were involved in this study to finish 90 sequences, each with 10 repetitions. They were required to perform target selection in ice-free manner. They were also encouraged to have parallel movement of two fingertips. We used the study result to create the predictive model to estimate the movement time of a user typing a word on any of the candidate layouts. By using these two metrics, we identified our optimized layout. I will skip the details of the optimization for time considerations. Intuitively, we can split keyboard from the middle, but based on our optimization result, what you're looking at here is a better layout in terms of performance. They only differ in two letters. Instead of locating on the right hand, letter B and the letter U are located at the left hand. This small change significantly improved the overall performance in terms of tapping speed and word ambiguity. The hardware of BiTyp text is an extension of TypText by placing additional capacitive sensor on the left index fingertip. We conducted a user study to evaluate BiTyp text with 10 participants in 2 steps. Participants were first required to type 80 phrases on our keyboard without any decoding algorithm. In this step, we collected ice-free typing data to build 2 spatial models for 2 fingertips. They were used in next step for statistical decoding. 1 day later, participants came back to go through 4 blocks, where each block contained 10 phrases. Here are the evaluation results. The x-axis shows different blocks, and the y-axis shows the text entry speed measured by word per minute and the error rate, respectively. The curve over 4 blocks shows a performance improvement. The average speed on the first block was 20 WPM. It went up to 25 WPM in the last block, with an average of 23.4 WPM over all blocks with a very low error rate. With that, I want to conclude our work and give you some take-home messages. First, I've presented a bimanual fingertip text entry technique. It has an average typing speed up to 23.4 WPM. Second, grouping is no longer needed in a split keyboard since letters on different fingertips can no longer be confused by statistical decoder. Bitip text is fast, natural, and unobtrusive, and it can be used in situations where both hands are available. I want to take this opportunity to thank all our co-authors again. This is all I want to share today. Thanks for your listening, and I'm more than happy to take any question.
Okay, great. Let's thank Zhu. Okay, so we're bumping right up against the break, but I think we have time for one question. Looks like Jinyi, you have your hand raised. Is that just from last session, or do you have a question for this session? Is that a no? Oh, okay, cool. Does anyone else have a question?
Okay. So the question is in the chat. Hello?
Hello? Where's the, I don't see the question in the chat. Maybe they privately messaged you.
Okay.
If not, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I noticed that when you started designing your systems, you did the bimanual text entry on 2 different hands. And I'm curious if the keyboard optimization would change if you just did 2 fingers on the same hand, but just only using 1 hand instead of 2. Do you think that would affect the keyboard layout in any particular way?
Yes, I think it will affect keyboard layouts, because when you look at the handiness expectation data, it is mostly like left keys. Keys on the left keyboard are most located on the left part of the original QWERTY keyboard. So if it's same hand, it could not be the left and the right combination. It will probably be like the up and the lower, upper and lower combination. So I think that will definitely affect the keyboard layout, but it can be a very good question. So a very good can be a very good question to work on in the future, because maybe it's also very fast on the same hand without 2 hands all being involved, and it can be used in more scenarios when only 1 hand is available.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jir. So I think it is time for our break. If you have any more questions for any of our speakers, please stick around, ask them, direct message them, email them, Twitter, whatever. Thank you so much for your attention, and please stick around. One more round of applause for all of our speakers during this session. Thank you so much. All right, I've been Josh Urban Davis, and I'll see you back after the break.
Hello, I think it is time to go to the next session. So the next session is health and privacy. And I'm the session chair. I'm the DM I presented earlier. And the first work presented in this paper is called social sensing, assessing social functioning of patients living with schizophrenia using mobile sensing. This work will be presented by Weichen Wang, and I will let Weichen Wang to introduce our co-authors. So let's welcome Weichen to present this paper.
Thank you, Duyan. So, just a minute. That's important. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
No.
No. No.
Did you share the screen?
I think I shared the screen. Wait, sorry for that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
sorry.
Good.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Diane. So, good morning, everyone. So my name is Weichen. Today I'm going to introduce our work about social sensing. In this work, we show how people can assess the social functioning of patients living with schizophrenia using mobile phone sensing. This work is from a wide collaboration among computer scientists, psychiatry and behavior scientists, and psychologists from Dartmouth College, University of Washington, Cornell University, Sandler University, Rice University, and also medical experts from Northwell Health. When we talk about social functioning, we were referring to how well individual is able to interact with their environment and fulfill the key skills associated with the social roles they hold within the environment, such as in the domain of social activities, work, and family relationships. Impaired social functioning is a symptom of mental illness, such as depression and schizophrenia. Therefore, social functioning is a key factor of interest in many research areas aimed at understanding and assessing mental health. Beyond the domain of mental disorders, deterioration in social functioning is also associated with aging processes because the elderly people can also experience a reduced capacity that can impact their ability to successfully interact with their environments. Given the significance of the social functioning, there's a growing interest in developing passive assessments for monitoring social behaviors, measuring the results of therapy, and designing accurate interventions. However, the standard practice for assessing social functioning in clinical and non-clinical settings are typically based on self-report and face-to-face evaluations. Such approaches are often costly, labor-intensive, and suffer from bias. What is needed are new approaches to passively and continuously assessing social functioning in the context of daily life, so that timely interventions can be designed. Inspired by the need and other emerging techniques in mobile technology, in this paper, we ask what behavioral patterns are associated with the social functioning in daily life. Can we predict social functioning through passive behavioral sensing derived from people's smartphones? So to answer these questions, we extended our previous cross-check study. The cross-check study is a randomized controlled trial conducted in collaboration with a large psychiatric hospital in Long Island. The whole study lasted for 4 years and recruited 150 participants. The patients are randomized into either smartphone arm, which n equals to 75, and the treatment as usual arm. We collect activity, ambient sound and light, conversation, mobility, location, call and SMS, app usage, phone lock, and so on. The data is uploaded to a secure server. The cross-check system was mainly focusing on monitoring the psychotic symptoms to identify whether an individual was at a risk of relapse. So differentially from the previous work that focused on the symptom or risk of relapse, in this study, we specifically investigate the social functioning, which is a more generalized area of broader interest to the HCI community. We sought out the detailed social functioning measures of these participants, which were clinically administered every 3 months, and combined them with our rich and real-world year-long mobile sensing data. We measure the social functioning, our ground truth, using the social functioning scale questionnaire, which rates the social interactions, interpersonal relationships, and activities of independent living in 7 subscales. There are social engagement withdrawal, which measures the time spent alone, initiation of a conversation and social avoidance. Interpersonal behavior, which captures the number of friends and quality of communication. Prosocial activities, which assesses the engagement in a range of social activities such as visiting relatives, playing sports, eating out in the restaurant, and so on. And recreation, which gauges the engagement in a range of hobbies, interests, and pastimes. Independence competence, which asks about the ability to perform skills necessary for independent living. And independence performance, which rates the performance of skills necessary for independent living. Finally, the employment, which relates to the engagement in productive employment or structured program of daily activity. So in this work, 55 participants in the smartphone arm who were complying with the study and social functioning assessment are involved in the analysis. So here, the figure shows the distribution of the social functioning skill, social functioning score for the 55 participants administered over 1 year on 2 subscales, which is recreation and the employment. X-axis is the index of the participants, and the y-axis is the score of the subscale. So we can see the participants were experiencing changing impairment during the study. And also some participants may have different strengths and weakness in different subscales of social functioning, meaning they can have a relatively high score on one subscale and a lower score on another. So the cross-check app collects a wide range of behavior passive sensing data from the phone. We compute the features on a daily basis and broken down into 4 epochs of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, and night, which allows us to model people's behaviors during different parts of the day. Specifically, we compute the features including physical activities, mobility, sleep patterns, ambient environmental context. We also can calculate the face-to-face conversations, smartphone-based communications, smartphone usage, and semantic location. The app contains a voice classifier which labels each audio frame into voice or unvoiced. From that, we build up the conversation features. Importantly, we consider semantic location because SFS contain questions about activity at different places. For example, do you leave the house? Do you buy food every day from store, something like that? So we assign semantics to the places where participants visit. We first label a significant location as a home, where if the participants spend most of time between 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then we use the Foursquare API to label the other significant locations. In order to understand how the passive sensing data is associated with SFS, we use a principle with the PCA and GE to explore the associations between the principal components of behavior features and SFS subscale scores. As is shown in the figure, we select the top 23 PCs that explain 90% of the variance of our analysis. So we label each PC by investigating its loadings. So we rely on the high-ranked behavioral features to understand the typical behaviors that make up each principal component. Our results show that 10 out of the 23 behavior patterns are associated with various social functioning subscales on a statistic significant level. So using the phone frequently for phone calls is associated with higher scores on interpersonal behavior, pro-social activities, and independent performance. Traveling and socializing with others at night is associated with the high scores of recreation and employment. Texting and chatting over the phone without others around is associated with lower scores of independence competence. Being physically active outside during the day alone is associated with the lower scores of self-engagement. Biking and visiting different places at night is associated with higher scores of independent competence. Visiting educational settings like gaming labs is associated with the lower scores of recreation. Being physical active outside during the day alone is associated with the lower scores of recreation, and so on. So we can look at the paper to get more information about this. So we believe this is very interesting findings. Yeah. So next, let's go to the prediction. And so because we ask, can we predict the social functioning through the passive behavior sensing derived from the people's smartphones? So we experiment with different methods to find the best prediction model for social functioning scale. Specifically, we experiment with different time windows, different dimensionality reduction method, and different machine learning models. So the SFS is assessed with every 3 months. We suspect the patient's response may subject to the recall bias, such as the response may be more accurate to describe the participant's recent behaviors. So we use 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, and the 15 days prior to the response. And we also experiment 3 different approaches for feature transformation and dimensionality reduction, PCA, SVD, and kernel PCA. We also evaluate the prediction performance using linear regression, the linear SVR, supported vector regression with RBF kernel, extremely randomized trees, random forest, and XGBoost. And we also we apply 3 cross-validation settings to evaluate the fivefold cross-validation, 3 cross-validation settings to evaluate the performance, which emulates the 3 common scenarios of the real practice. So firstly, the 5-fold cross-validation can emulate a mixture of settings as where some of the participants may have assessed multiple times where others are not. And the leave one subject out, the leave one subject out emulates a new patient without any historical social functioning skill records. And we also include a custom leave one subject out, which use the first data points of the one specific patient, combined with all the data points of other patients to predict the response of the patients in later assessment. This corresponding a situation that the patients established their first medical record in the hospital and will rely on the app to track the social functioning afterwards. And this is the result of the prediction. Overall, we see that the tree-based models outperform the linear regression models, and the performance of the customized leave one out subject is significantly better than the leave one subject out and close to the 5-fold cross-validations. It can predict the employment subscale best with like MA equals to 2.17 and correlation equals to 0.62. but it performed worse in predicting the recreation subscale. We think the reason might be due to the disability of mobile phone sensors to capture detailed items of recreation, such as swimming, gardening, cooking, and so on. So in the future studies, we think extra mobile sensors can be leveraged for better capturing these recreation activities. So yeah, so we believe that our approach opens up the new form of social function assessment and the intervention in the world to provide to improve people's lives. Specifically, we imagine that this technique to integrating a sensing core into the existing apps or like technologies can be bring a very good future to the healthcare systems. So there are many different design options to consider in the future for standalone systems to one integrate with care support systems. So I think that's all. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And is there anybody having any questions? Because the time limit, I think only one question is allowed. If there's no question, let me ask a question. So, I think this work is pretty good. I like the analysis and the model is beautiful, sensing the social functioning. But I wonder if have you considered how to use your prediction results for improving the disease of the patients, or yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think great question. So yeah, I think our initial goal is like we'll use this. We hope we can integrate this in the clinical settings. For example, right now, for those patients with schizophrenia, they went to the hospital, but they just sometimes they don't go to the hospital on time. So people, especially the clinical the doctors, they lost track of them. So they don't know whether they are living a good life, whether they are having severe impairment on, for example, social functioning, something like that. So the goal is like using this technique, it can be integrated into their daily using apps or some specific apps. Then it will help the doctor to keep track of this and give like on-time interventions. So this is so we are aiming at this, and this is our next step.
Okay, thanks, Wilson. And so let's go to the next paper. So the next paper is designing ambient and narrative-based interface to reflect and motivate physical activity. And this paper will be presented by Elizabeth Manners. So I will let her to introduce our co-authors, and let's welcome her to introduce this project.
Great, thanks. Can everybody see my slides and hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you, and but yeah, slides now. Okay.
I see the slides. Excellent. Well, thanks again so much. I'm Liz Murnane, and this is work that's been the result of a big collaboration with a team of amazing people, largely based at Stanford. Today, I'll be sharing our research to explore the design of ambient smartphone interfaces that use stories, so narrative-based feedback, to reflect and motivate behavior. Specifically, we're looking at exercise behavior and promoting physical activity, given it's not only crucial to well-being, but a lack of activity is one of the biggest global health challenges we face today. Now, personal technology has the potential to help address this challenge. In particular, broadly adopted sensor-laden smartphones and increasingly wearables provide substantial data about physical activity and enable interaction with users to try to motivate healthy behaviors in a way that's inexpensive, continuous, personalized, and at scale. The trouble is that while there are a ton of apps and devices out there to try to encourage people to move more, most aren't delivering on this potential. And a big part of the problem is the style of feedback these apps provide. Conventional formats that involve charts, graphs, statistical reports. It's a heavily quantitative approach. But research shows that people find this sort of health feedback hard to interpret and overwhelming. It can actually fuel negative mindsets, make physical activity seem distressing, and in the long run actually reduce motivation to exercise. So in our research, we wanted to explore a more qualitative form of feedback that helps people engage with their data in more rich, intuitive ways. And given the relatable and persuasive power of stories, we specifically pursued the design of data-driven narratives. That is, we visualize the user's activity data and progress towards fitness goals through comic-like stories that comprise a multi-chapter quest that we deliver through ambient glanceable smartphone wallpapers. So the basic idea is that our protagonist, Zuki, is this little space alien who ventures to Earth on a mission to save his planet, find his lost brother, encountering diverse scenes and characters and conflicts along the way. And as the user logs activities and meets goals, the plot progresses and Zuki similarly conquers his own challenges and reaches achievements. So let me first share a bit about our app and its main features. For tracking
sorry, I think your slide is very blurred and stuck at the homepage.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Could you try to reopen it again?
Sure.
So in the meantime, I wasn't paying much attention to what Taeyong have said, but just in case, he didn't say this. This is the best paper. This is the best paper from Kai.
One of many.
Oh,
one
yes.
of many, but thank you.
One of many.
Let me try. So right now, do you see kind of pink grass stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
And then if
Liz, it looks a little bit pixelated when you show your slides. I don't know why that is. So you can actually see the slides, but it looks like, it's like a low res version coming over Zoom.
Do you see kind of the shoe now and then the personal technology slide?
No, we just see the design against now. Now we do. Yeah, now we see the.
Okay. I guess there's kind of a little bit of a lag. So I apologize for that. I guess we'll just try to move through it and hopefully you get the gist enough. And if there are any questions, and the talk is also recorded and on a website I'll point everyone to if you care to look later, but hopefully the lag is not too bad, but it is at least transitioning.
You just transition back to the
first one?
First slide, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, in the interest of time, I think I'll move forward again to kind of where I was, starting to describe the app. So we're here. Do you see little Zuki on the screen?
Not yet.
Wow, that's quite a lag. Sorry.
Oh, now we do.
Now you do. Okay, well, there'll just be a little lag, the joys of video-based conferencing. So again, the basic idea is that this is Zuki. He's the protagonist of our story. He's ventured to Earth on a mission to save his planet, and he's finding his lost brother at the same time. And basically, as a user logs activities and meets goals, the plot in our story progresses, and Zuki is similarly conquering his own challenges and reaching achievements. So I just want to provide a little bit about the app, even if there's a little lag. Hopefully, you'll get the idea. So for tracking activities, we support both automated and manual logging, and that reduces tracking barriers and maximizes capture of progress, while also enabling individuals to maintain control over their data. And so specifically, we're using the activity inference supplied by Google Fit to automatically detect walking and running and biking. And then by launching the app, users can review and edit and delete recorded activities or add other activities, as well as set and review weekly exercise goals. And then we visualize all these activities and achievements as components of a multi-chapter narrative that resides on a phone's lock screen and home screen, which provides at-a-glance feedback that further reduces barriers to information, especially considering statistics that people check their phones 80 to 200 times a day. And you'll notice the interface contains several types of real-time positive feedback. So first, logged activities are stylized as these small icons thematically related to the storyline of the current chapter. So in this space chapter, it's the stars in the sky. And each time a user logs a physical activity, new icons populated at the top of the screen. And then we encode activity type using different colors. So blue for biking, red for running, yellow for walking, purple for other manually logged types of activities. And duration is encoded with icon size. So activities lasting less than 30 minutes or smaller, 30 to 60 minutes are medium sized, and activities lasting more than 60 minutes get a bigger icon. Achievement towards goals is also reflected by a progress indicator in the bottom right corner of the screen, together with the story unfolding. So specifically, each successive piece of the chapter gets visually and textually narrated as the user reaches 20%, 40%, 60, 80, 100% of her goals that week. So here Zuki's getting progressively closer and closer to his own goal of reaching Earth in chapter 1. And then once that 100% mark is reached, the next chapter is unlocked. And we designed 13 chapters that I'll scroll through now to provide at least a 3-month-long experience to exceed the point by which research finds most existing apps are abandoned and the average sticking point for habit formation. And then these chapters are all tied together by Zuki's backstory, an overarching plot that follows an episodic structure from exposition to rising action and climax to falling action and conclusion. And we also employ narrative principles like characterization with our sympathetic protagonist and antagonist and dramatic challenges that the user has to help overcome throughout. And the narrative really was the key part. So we've worked closely with narratology professors from the English department at Stanford in refining the story, as well as with users, doing multiple rounds of user studies to enhance the narrative's comprehensibility and allure. And just to be clear, there's a large body of knowledge around why narratives are compelling, which helps suggest levers we can pull as designers to create a story likely to be successful at motivating behavior. And so I really encourage you to check out the paper to learn more about those theories and techniques. This iterative user-centered process helped us not only craft the storyline, but also hone the interface's look and feel and functionality, moving through early stage steps like storyboarding concepts, prototyping and testing, including with paper, like you can see here, to developing progressively more high-fidelity interfaces that we'd continue to vet and refine through large-scale online surveys, as well as smaller-scale in-lab interviews and user testing sessions. Fuller details are in the paper, and supplemental materials are available online where you can poke deeper into all the narrative content, the app screens, various design artifacts. For today, I want to focus more on insights we derived through this process, grouped around 3 main themes related to the importance of designing to support intuitive visual communication, emotional richness, and thematic coherence. So first, we found the visuals of the narrative mattered the most to people. They expressed a preference for the visual of the story to be comprehensible on its own, so we worked to improve the standalone legibility of the visuals, shorten lengthy accompanying text. Storylines that depended on too much text for context also hindered the glanceability of the display, and so did things like where Android places notifications on the lock screen. So we put progress indicators at the top and bottom to avoid competing with other visual elements as much as possible. People also really liked having obvious visual markers of progress, including to celebrate achievement of goals. So we retooled where on the screen the feedback appeared, in which direction it grew. We added this fun celebratory overlay once 100% progress was reached. And then next we saw that having an emotional attachment to the story was really central to maintaining engagement with the app, as well as engagement with one's fitness goals. And so for instance, originally the sole framing of the narrative was Zuki coming to Earth to save his home planet. But after user studies and given the motivational value of familism in narrative, we shifted the backstory to also include that the journey was driven by Zuki's mission to search and rescue his brother, who hopefully you can see here is in a red hat. We tried several variants to distinguish Zuki's brother, and it turned out that a mustache and beret simply don't convey vulnerable little brother, as well as a sideways baseball cap. We also identified a need for the story to be more emotionally arousing. There were several original chapters that people felt were predictable, so that helped us rework content to invite more anticipation and cliffhangers, more substantial transitions, which we found kept people curious and engaged. And additional sidekick characters, or excuse me, additional characters like an antagonist FBI agent simultaneously trying to hunt Zuki down, or sidekicks that would help out along the way. These characters helped raise and resolve conflict to maintain excitement and additional emotional richness for people. And then finally, a big takeaway we saw was the need for the narrative experience to be coherent. So people really needed a logical relationship between completing fitness goals and the plot line. For instance, we'd had one chapter where Zuki rode a camel across a desert in an apparently leisurely way, and people really felt a disconnect with that. So we tweaked so that the camel drops Zuki off after a point, who then needs to fend for himself a little bit. And instead, people preferred chapters where Zuki's own challenge required climbing and jumping and swimming, physically exerting actions that connected better with their fitness mission and fostered that camaraderie with Zuki. So that's a kind of external coherence, a resonance between the user's actions and progress in real life and Zuki's actions and progress in the narrative. But we also saw a need for internal coherence with the interface containing consistent themes and aesthetics throughout. So for example, early designs for some of our chapters use pretty generic progress indicators or activity icons, and people noted that those elements fell flat. And so as a result, we revamped icons and imagery in several chapters to be more thematically cohesive, like a carabiner progress meter for a mountain climbing chapter, ensuring we simply didn't reuse the same activity icons across multiple chapters. And while seemingly small design choices, we were surprised by how much they mattered to people and genuinely impacted their experience of the narrative. So we saw the little details really mattered. And then after having iterated through phases of design and testing to identify insights like these and refine the system accordingly, the next essential step was to deploy Zuki to explore people's experience engaging with narrative-based feedback in everyday life. And given the exploratory descriptive nature of the pilot, we focused on a small sample of 16 people. It was a 3-week field trial involving in-person interviews, periodic surveys, and logs of physical activity and app use. We randomly assigned people into one of 4 between subjects groups, which varied chapter length and whether or not notifications were delivered at each 20% progress milestone. So specifically, users who got the multi-chapter version were provided the 3-week chapters, the first 3 chapters given the 3-week study duration, while users in the single chapter group got the same chapter replayed each week. And that looks a lot like the experience of influential UBFit and UBGreen style interfaces that allowed us to investigate how episodic structure within a single chapter versus across multiple chapters really impacts experience with the system and ongoing motivation. So I'll touch on a few main results related to how we observed the system affecting everyday exercise activities and attitudes, as well as engagement with the interface and story. So first, in terms of exercise behavior, the narrative did seem to impact it. We saw participants setting a variety of goals, from walking and running to strength training, yoga, house cleaning. But regarding progress towards those goals, people who got the multi-chapter feedback did seem to fare better. 6 out of 8 of them achieved all 100% of their goals, compared to only 2 out of 8 people in the single chapter conditions reaching their targets. And it wasn't because they simply set fewer, easier goals. Multi-chapter people actually set more goals that were more challenging. Overall, people logged a total of 1,065 activities, around 82% of them automatically and 18% manually. But again, activity levels did vary with condition. So specifically, while the average number of logged activities dropped off after the 2nd week for everyone, single chapter people dropped over 43% from week 2 to 3, while the multi-chapter experience seemed to buffer the decline, with those participants decreasing less than 15%. Plus, in terms of the actual duration of activities, exercise duration progressively decreased each week for single chapter participants, while multi-chapter people remained relatively stable across the study and even climbed ever so slightly from week 2 to 3. Beyond behavior, also interested in examining psychological attitudes, which can moderate the relationship between exercise and health, and analyzing survey questions based on the transtheoretical model of behavior change. We found that half of multi-chapter participants advanced at least one psychological stage, whereas only one single chapter person advanced. 5 showed no change, and the remaining 2 actually showed reverse psychological progress in terms of their readiness and self-efficacy to change behavior. And then our survey and interview data also make us suspect that for individuals in earlier stages of behavior change, the emotional support of a narrative scaffolding may be most motivating, while people in a later stage likely need more instrumental support and depended more on our features like notifications or in-app screens for drilling down into details of their activity traces and progress trends. One person who began the study already in action stage was confident that, quote, I need more data rather than the story. I needed the numbers and charts. And so moving on to engagement with both the system and the story. So based on screen on-off logs, we found that people who received the multi-chapter narrative glanced at their phone, and in turn, Zuki's ambient display approximately 30% more on average throughout the study. Plus, while these screen views increased week to week for multi-chapter participants, screen glances of single chapter participants decreased during the final week of the study. In interviews, single chapter participants explained dwindling interest once it recycled the same set of content because they already knew what was going to happen, whereas multi-chapter people described wanting to periodically check in on Zuki, for example, quote, just to see how he is, what he's doing. And then we also use the narrative engagement scale to assess key dimensions associated with a story's persuasiveness. I'm going to move this quickly because I know we're a little over time, behind time. With the exception of realism, participants who experienced the multi-chapter version reported greater engagement with the narrative across all dimensions. And so those are all the results I have time to highlight today, lots more descriptive findings as well as contextualizing quotes in the paper. I did just want to briefly emphasize how this deployment wasn't intended to prove behavior change, which isn't the goal at this stage of HCI research. We need a longitudinal study to test sustained effects of the system. Rather, it's important to first undertake these sorts of deep qualitative engagements in situ to establish the system's viability in the wild, including to discover and understand ways experienced outside the lab. And so in wrapping up, I just want to briefly review a couple opportunities to build on this research. A natural and necessary next step is, again, to undertake those large sample longitudinal deployments, and we already have such a study underway. There's also lots of room to explore the design of more complex narratives that support additional literary principles, maybe thinking about specific genres, writing styles, collaborative features to share stories, depending on the target populations and context of use. For instance, narrative feedback may be especially salient for groups that have a strong oral tradition. It introduces opportunities to study cultural differences and develop designs that are sensitive to the needs of diverse users. We can also think about building smart narrative technologies, and our field study participants expressed a desire for more interactivity with the story. And so overall, we see our system as a platform for exploring the designs of these sorts of novel, narrative-centered, intelligent, and interactive tools. More generally, I hope the work I shared with you has sparked new ideas for your own research, how it might connect with narrative-based approaches. But I'm looking forward to taking questions and discussing further today, but also here's my emails. I'd love to hear from you anytime. So thank you.
Okay, thank Elizabeth. Is there anyone has a question? And we will use the 5-minute break to have a Q&A. So please, if there's any question, please raise your hand. So, Summer, please ask a question.
Hi, first of all, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I am Summer from HCI in University of Manitoba. I have a question regarding, did you consider any factors like age of the user, lifestyle, and the preferred activities while designing the app?
It's a great question. Definitely, we're not advocating for a one-size-fits-all approach at all. Part of the, as I see, the value of a narrative is really to create this highly personalized experience. We did have even though it was a small sample, a pretty good mix of different demographics and age ranges, and we saw they all engaged with the narrative in slightly different ways and had very idiosyncratic goals in many cases. So it's not necessarily fair to compare people head to head. But in terms of kind of their own behavior change process, we saw the narrative really did seem to help quite a bit.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I definitely encourage too in future work, kind of looking at how narrative works or doesn't work with certain populations,
Yes.
Maybe even in collective group settings, things like this. There's so much
maybe you will consider some kind of personalization based on the user's preferred activities or their lifestyle or whatever.
Yeah, including environmental factors. You know, a lot of these apps, they place a lot of burden on the individual to change their behavior. But if you're living in a setting or have any number of other variety of factors that maybe are working against that, having a system that's maybe sensitive to some of those barriers would be huge and quite different than what we often see.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's an amazing idea and interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Liz.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have something to say. It's not a question. I'll contact you on offline for questions. I have something to say. So every year, so we're very lucky to have new faculties to join us at the CS department, and so our new colleagues brings all sorts of different background and expertise, and make our CS department just stronger. And I saw Sarah Pram here today in the crowd.
Hi.
And she is our new faculty. I think you'll be joining us next year, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
we just cannot wait to welcome you into next year. So
of course, yeah.
I want to welcome you. And so Sarah Pram does research in the broader, area of pervasive health. Of course, I'll let you to tell us what you do. So why don't you tell us something, introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, XD, for introducing me. So I'm very excited to join Dartmouth next year, and I can't wait to work with all of you either. And thank you for inviting me to this session as well. Great sessions, and congrats to all of you, and congrats to Elizabeth as well for this Best Paper Award. So for me, I work in the intersection of AI and cyber physical systems. So in my research, I have actually applied different theories and techniques to improve the health safety of individuals. So I do plan to continue working on that area, on smart health, pervasive health, In addition to that, I'm also very interested to look into the areas of intelligent assistants, to how to make the intelligent assistants more interactive, more context aware, more adaptive to the individuals, as well as explore techniques where we combine data and knowledge to provide informed decision support to different applications.
Oh, cool. I cannot wait to talk to you in person.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you like anytime. We can like maybe chat offline and set up a meeting as well. Yeah, we don't have to wait until my official start date.
Absolutely. So everybody who's interested in Sarah's research, send an email to her. A big shout out to Sarah. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course.
So now let me hand it over to June, who's the chair for the next session.
Cool. So hello everyone. So we are getting into the last section of today's event. So hope you are still as energetic as I am. So my name is Jun Gong. So I am a 5th year PhD student from X Discovery Lab working with Xindong at Dartmouth College. So it's my pleasure to chair this section, and it is mainly about learning. So there are two super interesting papers in this section. One is about social cues, influence students' persistence, and the other one is about a circuit education tool for the people with visual impairments. So let's welcome our first speaker, Renee. So he will present Welcome to the course, Early Social Cues Influence Women's Persistence in Computer Science. Yeah, please go ahead, Renee.
Hi, thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you, XD, for organizing this great event. Let me try and share my slides before I move on. Click present. All right. Can everybody see what I'm seeing? Yeah, great. Okay. So I'm joined here today by a fantastic interdisciplinary and multi-institutional international team of researchers. I believe we've got Andy Saltarelli here from Stanford. Petra, of course, you've already heard from. Mike is on paternity leave, so he's not joining us today. Ella, I don't know if she's joining us today. She's an independent researcher in France. And then Remy Sharrock from Telecom Paris, who is joining us today as well. And so this work really came together as a very collaborative project from multiple perspectives, trying to do science in massive open online courses, which have become very popular over time. And aside from serving millions of people with relatively free access to education who have an internet connection, it also has opened up a space for research into the science of diversity and inclusion. And I don't think it's a very apt time for this kind of talk, because it deals with issues of diversity, not racial-based, but gender-based, although one might argue that the same kind of story really applies to race-based inclusion in computer science as well. Many of you might realize that computer programming once had much better gender balance than it does today. Fortunately, the CHI community, thanks to much of the design influence that comes in, does have a pretty decent gender balance. But on average, the computer science departments and computer programming jobs have an underrepresentation of women. In fact, if you look back, there's this great New York Times story. In the 1960s, government employed around 27, government statistics showed that around 27% of programmers were women. That number peaked in the 1990s at 35%. And since then, it has unfortunately gone down even below the 1960 statistics. And so it raises an important question, which is, what is happening in computer science today, and what is the state of diversity, right? Why is it that minoritized groups face these complex and interrelated structural and social barriers to start even going into the direction of computer science, right? Let alone stay in a computer science profession. One place that has a lot of great information on the current state of how people are thinking about this in terms of the actual people on the ground are the Google Gallup polls. So if anybody's interested in this topic, I highly recommend the kinds of polls that they do. They're very careful, they're nationally representative, they're really well done. And so one of them found that students and parents perceive that there are just fewer portrayals of women, Hispanics, and Black computer scientists in TV and in the movies, right? We just, the way Hollywood portrays this, the way that the news media portrays it, is as a white male or maybe Asian male discipline, right? And that bears out not only in people's perceptions, but if you go and code movies, you will find the same, right? Also, it seems very dangerous, right? Because it's always the guy behind the computer terminal who gets shot in the James Bond movies. So it's a dangerous job as well. Well, students from underrepresented groups struggle to feel welcome in computer science courses. Is one of the major conclusions of a large body of work. Which raises the question, right? We are designers at our core, and so it raises the question: how can we design courses and learning experiences that encourage women to enroll, engage, and succeed in CS courses, right? And this has until recently been mostly in physical environments, right? How do we design a building to be welcoming? And there's some great work on building design, especially in the medical domain, where you want to make hospitals feel welcoming, make patients feel safe. And I think we will see this coming up again with COVID, trying to get people to feel safe going back into physical spaces. But for now, here in the technological space, this is sort of our home turf, right? We have online courses which have an infinite design space, where we can really change them whatever way we want. So how should we change them in order to really encourage women to enroll more, to engage more, succeed more in CS courses? One way to break down this very large question is by thinking about the different stages in the process, right? Some people call this the pipeline, although others point out that that metaphor sounds a little oily. So there's the decision to enter an environment, right? Which is right at the beginning, right? You find out about the opportunity to take an online course in computer science and programming, right? Do you enter? And that's a place for improving minority representation right from the bat. Then you have those potential students coming in, looking at the course, taking the course and starting, getting them off to a good start. Lots of research suggests is very important, right? The first few minutes, the first few hours in the course can really make it or break it. And so reducing barriers to success early on is another place to intervene. And then finally, persistence and success in the environment, supporting students when they struggle, not letting them struggle for too long, and really supporting their learning throughout. So in this talk, we really focus on the getting a good start piece. Now, work on diversity and inclusion in online learning environments has received some attention when MOOCs became a big deal, right? This is an article from 2013, where Anand Agarwal, the CEO of edX, claimed that there are now no race, color, sex, or wealth barriers because MOOCs allow everybody to access content at a click. Similar statements are made by Coursera, one of the other major massive open online course providers. They envision a world where anyone, anywhere can transform their life by accessing the best learning experience. Those are great goals to have. The reality, though, looks different, and there are many studies to show this. I'm just going to feature one that we did a while back, looking at completion rates, which we know are relatively low. We find that they are also very different across different countries in the world, right? So the idea that the poor kids in a slum somewhere in the global south have equal opportunities to success in this environment just doesn't bear out in the data, right? As you can see in the scatter plot, the higher the development of a country, the higher the completion rate across 55 different courses here of participants in that country. So let me give you some background on the gender piece and on the psychology really of what goes on as somebody enters a course. And there are two important psychological barriers I want to highlight here that we address in this study. One is social belonging uncertainty. It's the feeling of not belonging, or being unsure of whether I belong or I don't belong in an environment, right? That psychological process can have fundamental consequences for one's behavior and performance in an environment. Secondly, social identity threat, the worry about being seen negatively in light of one's identities, right? So I might enter an environment where I'm concerned that people will see me in light of my identity, and based on that, they will maybe discriminate against me, or they will see the successes I have in a different light, right? Or they'll treat me differently. And so both of these are known to, this is a little out of order. Both of these are known to impair working memory, knowledge acquisition, persistence, and motivation, right? So a broad spectrum of things that are very important when trying to achieve in an environment, and when deciding whether or not to stay in an environment that's completely optional to stay in. And so that suggests that among other things, these processes are contributing to US achievement gaps based on gender, based on race, and other factors. Irving Goffman really put it well when he wrote, "The central feature of the stigmatized individual situation in life is a question of acceptance. Am I accepted in this environment for who I am?" And there's been some work addressing this question in the context of female participation in STEM. So some work has shown that the gender ratio in a STEM conference promo video, this is sort of a short video about a STEM conference where they varied it from 1/3 women to 2/3 women, that had an impact on how women perceived the likelihood of belonging in that environment and how much stereotype threat they experienced. Some other work has looked at gender stereotypical classrooms, both physical, where they change the art and the decoration in a physical computer science classroom, or virtual, where they did it in VR, both times showing that perceptions of belonging among women in that classroom changed as a result. Men's perceptions stayed exactly the same in those studies. Some more recent work at CHI a few years ago was looking at the design of a CS course website, and it used one that was more techy and cool looking, cool in the cold sense, and one that was more inviting, more welcoming. And so replicating some of the prior findings, it also showed that women were more interested in the CS course if it had the more inviting looking appearance. And some other work by my colleague Chris Brooks, who looked at the gender of people in the background of his data science courses lecture videos. And so he has this green screen, and behind him there's a video of people, and they changed the background or men in the background. And he found that that had some influence on participation in the forum, how much women were participating and men were participating. So a number of studies showing that that these smaller or somewhat larger changes in the design of an environment can have an impact on behavior in the environment. Some of the work that we did in the past and presented last year at CHI and at Learning at Scale did similar things, looking at changing the course picture from something that looks more techy to something that looks more inviting and features a woman, and looking at the impact of diversity statements on course pages in order to invite more students to come in. Now, we can classify these different kinds of cues by looking at by categorizing them into different design types, right? And so we did that in this 2019 paper by creating these 4 categories: visual content, verbal content, right? So visual content, pictures, video, visual design, so the web design really of
Hi, sorry. We are losing your voice. Hi, Renee.
I think we're also behind on the slides, unfortunately. Renee, should I share my screen instead of you? Maybe that'll be helpful to your internet connection.
Renee, are you still there? I guess he's trying to connect back. Let's wait a little bit.
How about now? Can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Yeah, Renee, should I share my screen instead of you? I might have a, and share the internet burden.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. I'm not at home, and so the internet is not as good here.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
I'm standing outside of the building.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
You just need to give me clues on when to turn pages, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you, Petra. So this is the course where.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry
So this is the course where. This is the course where the study happened. This is the C programming with Linux course that Petra and Remy teach together, and it has several modules. And we conducted the following study in this environment in true CS MOOCs that are sequential. Okay, next slide. And the course is has a lot of students. It has 220,000 last time we checked, who have enrolled in the program. And next slide. The bad news is that only that 81% of those students who are enrolled in the course are, and so there's a lot of room for improvement, especially because it's a completely introductory course. So students can come in. It doesn't require much background in the area at all. All right, so let me show you what the study was on the next slide. Perfect. So we decided to randomize the video that was the first welcome video in the course, right? And so it was either the default, which was both Remy and Petra together, or just Petra or just Remy, keeping constant everything else, right? So they said exactly the same things. The pictures in the background were exactly the same. Everything was the same. And so we looked at how students progressed for male and female students in the course. And here's what we found. So this is, we're gonna skip that. I'll skip that. So here's what we found. Male students had no effect whatsoever. No matter which instructor condition they received, they were equally likely to progress to the first assignment in the course. Whereas female students were significantly less likely to proceed when the female instructor was shown. Okay, so this is not what we expected. We expected the opposite. We expected that the male instructor would maybe reduce persistence because there's no female role model. Okay. If we go to the next slide, we also see that when we dug into it somewhat more, we found that the effect was really driven by certain age groups. Right, it was older students, older female learners who didn't prefer the female instructor, but preferred the male instructor or both instructors. Right? Some survey findings show that this is related to perceptions of status, although expertise was pretty similar. So we think that maybe the stereotypes that women have who are older when coming into the environment led them to be less likely to continue in the environment when they saw just one female instructor. All right, let's look at the next one. So this is a second study that ran simultaneously in the second sequence of this course, and this looked at how it would work if we highlighted peer role models, right? So there's a lot of work showing that peer role models can be effective in encouraging persistence. And so we randomized between the video, again, keeping everything constant between peers and the two instructors. And here's what we found. We're focusing on age, thinking that younger students might be more affected by seeing peers of their age group, but we found zero effect on age. No matter what the age group, there was no difference between the two conditions. Instead, what we found again on the next slide is a gender difference. And once again, it's female learners who were less likely to persist if they saw the peers rather than the instructors. And what we find is that in some survey work that we've done, that the peer video was rated as much lower in status than the instructor and lower expertise, right? And so once again, we've got female learners being very sensitive to those cues, maybe thinking, well, maybe I don't learn as much in this course if it has these peers starting off the course rather than real instructors, quote unquote, right? And so that's what we found in this study. So on the next slide, we see that this pattern persisted over time, right? That one video at the very start of this long course had an effect that persisted across the entire course. And so it is impactful, just that one little cue early on. On the next slide. We find some age differences, but mostly we see this one age group, 21 to 30, be most affected. Those 51 to 70-year-olds, there are not really many students in that age group, so we shouldn't over-interpret that. But this requires some more unpacking, right? It's worth noting that between 21 and 30 is sort of the age group of those students that we observed. Okay, next slide. So here's some takeaways, and I'll go through these a little more quickly. We find that subtle cues, right? Just one video at the beginning of the course can sometimes work in unexpected ways, right? Much of the research would suggest that featuring a female role model would be good for increasing persistence of women, but we find here that it backfired, frankly. Next. We find some work on age and generational effects, right, which need to be explored more. There's very little work in the literature right now understanding the age-gender interaction, and so how that manifests for choosing the right cues for encouraging persistence is important. We also see the importance of this pipeline, right, that I showed you from one step to the next, and so choosing what course banners, images, promotional collateral to put on there can have a big impact on who makes it through the course. Finally, we want to be careful with techie banners, right? And so it raises some questions for HCI future work. Which is what are best practices for designing for inclusion, and how can designers tackle the gender and other gaps in computer science? On the next slide, we have some future work which looks at changing some of the techie images early on. And so one of the changes that we've made is to the original to something that looks a lot more inviting and inclusive. And we're currently experimenting with this and with interviews of experts in the field who are male and female in order to look at how those kinds of role models who are different from the instructor can affect persistence in the course. And with that, I'll thank you and apologize for the tech issues.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I guess we do not have time for more questions. Please just reach out to Renee offline, and if you have any further questions. Yeah, thank you so much. Great talk, great work.
Great, I'll monitor the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then we are coming into our last speaker, Josh. So he will present tangible circuits and interactive 3D printed circuit education tool for the people with visual impairments. So the paper received an honorable mention award. Congratulations, the team. So please go ahead, Josh.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
And can you see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to move very quickly because we're running behind on time. But hi, I'm Josh Urban Davis from the Dartmouth Discovery Lab. And today I'll be talking about tangible circuits and interactive 3D printed circuit education tool for people with visual impairments. In the maker community, novices learn circuits with breadboards by following examples and tutorials from the web. However, most of the existing web tutorials are inaccessible to the blind or visually impaired BVI community because they rely heavily on visual information to communicate the material. This high bar of entry to learning electronics excludes the BVI community from participating in innovation via making. BVI children also miss out on critical STEM education and further high-tech careers. While many accessibility tools exist, most do not encourage or enable BVI users to create their own accessibility tools. To account for this, we created tangible circuits. And real quick, I've had trouble before with my videos playing. Can you see my video playing? June, can you see my video playing? Anyone want to?
Yes, yes.
Awesome, thanks. So to account for this, we created tangible circuits, a cost-effective tactile model of a breadboard circuit with audio feedback for BVI makers and students. Tangible circuits comprise an automatic parsing tool which translates a circuit diagram in the Fritzing format into a 3D model that is printable with a commercial 3D printer and protopasta composite conductive PLA material. The tactile circuit model has components printed using a conductive filament and can be affixed to a smartphone to allow for touch-based interaction for learning. When each component or wire is touched, audio feedback details the name of the component, the position, and other details regarding its connection and implementation. I'll now give a brief demo of our prototype being used.
This is wire line 5. It connects a wire line 6 to an NPN transistor. This is NPN transistor. This component should be inserted into pin 19J, 20J, and 21J.
This work builds upon many previous intersecting research ventures in the design of circuit prototyping and education tools, tangible interaction approaches for BVI persons, and STEM education tools for BVI students. These previous efforts indicate that novice engineers often learn circuit prototyping through replication of example circuits and face numerous challenges, including choosing the correct components, wiring components together, and debugging. This problem is further compounded for students with BVI due to the visual nature of our traditional teaching methods. Many tools and approaches have been developed to assist novice students with BVI learn STEM-related skills by incorporating audio feedback. While many of these tools have been designed to teach programming, none, to our knowledge, have explored techniques for teaching physical computing. So it seemed evident to us that we needed to better understand the scope of the problem using a series of formative interviews. So we talked to 3 BVI engineers familiar with circuit prototyping technology. We first wanted to understand the current practices in hardware education and found that web tutorials were often relied upon by our interviewed instructors. The literature corroborated this insight, revealing that web tutorials were commonly used by educators of a variety of backgrounds as a principal source of classroom material. We also inquired about current tangible methods used within this domain and found that tactile diagrams were commonly used, but due to the abstraction used in direct graphic translation, these diagrams remain largely unusable. And finally, we discovered that existing circuit education tools for producing tactile assets included braille embossers and swell paper, which are prohibitively expensive and not commonly available in engineering educational settings. Unlike 3D printers, which are quite commonly available in these settings, and thus 3D printing served as a viable candidate for the development of our prototype. So since web tutorials were very commonly used at all different levels of the engineering education process to teach novice users how to design and implement circuits, it seemed evident to us that we needed to better understand web tutorial accessibility. The focus of this initial study was to understand the magnitude of accessibility limitations within online open source tutorial platforms, as well as insights into common web accessibility pitfalls. For the purpose of this study, we collected a ton of tutorials, pretty much all that we could find, 7,321 online tutorials from 2 popular online open source tutorial platforms, Arduino Project Hub and Fritzing Hub. And after filtering, which we filtered out tutorials that were incomplete or were fragmented or had corrupted data, and we found that our collection after this filtering comprised 3,109 tutorials from Arduino Project Hub and 801 tutorials for a total of 3,909 tutorials from these online open source repositories. And then these tutorials were then analyzed using the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, which is an online protocol and guideline system for ensuring web accessibility and is generally referred to as the standard by which accessibility is set for most web domains. So this figure details some of the results that we found. I'm going to kind of gloss over them fairly quickly in the interest of time. One example of a discrepancy that we found is that these online web tutorials are largely unusable. For example, 79.5% of the tutorials contained graphics, but only about 2% actually contained graphic descriptions or even figure descriptions. So these graphics and schematics are almost completely unusable for someone who is not sighted. In fact, we found that only 2% of tutorials even met the WCAG standards of accessibility, meaning that the majority of online tutorials that are a common source of education material for classrooms at various levels is completely unusable for people who have blind or visual impairments. So based upon the insights from the above study, we devised a series of criteria to inform the design of our system. From our collected formative interviews and our preliminary study, we devised 4 design considerations. We wanted to provide adequate information regarding components to ensure their identification. We wanted to incorporate multiple forms of feedback and guidance, such as audio, tangible, etc., in order to broaden accessibility. We wanted to support an understanding of the structural and spatial information of the circuit, which is imperative for understanding the function of the circuit, including connectivity of different components and their interactions. And we wanted to employ automation to mitigate the considerable time and effort demanded of tutorial designers and educators to meet standards of accessibility. So based on these design considerations, we considered a prototype that we call tangible circuits to address some of these concerns and pitfalls. And I'd like to walk you through the pipeline of the algorithm now. So first, what tangible circuits takes a Fritzing diagram as input and parses the diagram into a 3D model and touch-based audio interface. These 2 complementary components comprise our tutorial system, and the resulting interactive tactile diagram operates on a commodity capacitive touchscreen device, such as smartphone or tablet, without any modification needed to the device. The 3D model is extracted from the Fritzing diagram and renders an approximate replica of the component within the circuit. Tangible circuits components and wires are printed using Protopasta composite conductive PLA hard extrusion filament. This conductive filament is crucial to the operation of the device. Although the case and board are printed using non-conductive filament and the components printed with conductive filament, both of these elements were printed as a single unit using a multi-material 3D printer. The audio interface consists of a series of buttons laid out on the display of the touchscreen device, as you can see here on the screen. Each button is associated with a different component present within the circuit diagram. When touched, the device reads audio information related to the target component associated with the button. Oops. The 3D printed casing allows the tactile circuit diagram to sit above the capacitive touchscreen. And each component in the tactile circuit diagram sits directly above its corresponding audio interface buttons and thus triggers the voice annotation below each component when touched. The resulting interaction allows for both audio and tangible interaction to inform the user of the circuit's spatial, structural, and geometric information. Once again, I'd like to show you a brief demo of our prototype being used.
This is buzzer. It connects 220 ohm resistor with a red LED and an NPN transistor. The red power wire of this buzzer should be inserted into pin 11F. The black ground wire should be inserted into pin 13F. This is red LED. It connects wire line 3 with a buzzer and an NPN transistor.
In order to understand the effectiveness of tangible circuits for assisting BVI users at understanding sample breadboard circuits, we conducted a formal user study. The focus of this evaluation is to understand how tangible circuits complements and contrasts open source web tutorials at communicating circuit tutorial implementation. We recruited 14 participants, 10 of which identified as female, 8 self-reported as blind, and 11 self-reported their electronics background as none. Our study consisted of 2 sessions, learning and testing, as well as 2 stages, tangible circuits and web tutorials. In the learning session, participants were asked to learn 1 of 4 sample circuits using either tangible circuits or web tutorials modified to WCAG accessibility standards. I'd like to pause and emphasize this point because we didn't want to create a straw man argument where we compared a tutorial from the web that is not accessible by current standards with our new system, because this doesn't really show if there's any clear benefit from the current standards and our prototype. The testing session followed the learning session immediately, in which participants were asked to complete 2 tasks, a component identification task and an error identification task. During component identification, we presented participants with a bucket of 17 common electronic components, such as resistors, LEDs, etc. And the bucket contained only 1 example of each kind of component. We then asked participants to use their stage apparatus, either web tutorials or tangible circuits, as a guide for identifying components used in the construction of the tutorial circuit. And during circuit error identification, we presented the participants with a completed circuit using physical components on an unpowered breadboard, such as those seen here on the screen. I don't know why I say such as these, as if it's an example. These are the breadboards we used. Each of these physical circuits were similar to the circuits described in the tutorial apparatus. So the physical circuits were similar to the circuit that you were supposed to implement using either web tutorials or using tangible circuits. But each of the physical circuits contained 2 errors, a wire error and a component error. And participants were then asked to use the tutorial apparatus as a reference for answering 3 questions regarding the physical circuit. Is this physical circuit the same circuit described in the tutorial? Is this circuit different? If so, how? And how would you modify the physical circuit to match the circuit described with the tutorial? The point of this particular study was to understand and kind of contrast how you would use web tutorials to understand the spatial, geometric, and functional structure of the circuit, and also how would tangible circuits help inform that information as well. So in the component identification phase, participants identified 62% of the circuit components with tangible circuits versus 34% with web tutorials. And we also found that participants who previously using web tutorials had been unable to identify complicated components such as resistors, were able to identify them using tangible circuits later on. So this tells us that there is a substantial benefit to having this tangible information and this audio information when trying to complete and understand these tutorial apparatuses. I'm going to go quickly through my results because we are over time, but as you can see, overall participants performed significantly better using tangible circuits on the component and on the error identification task. Teal in this diagram demonstrates the performance of tangible circuits versus purple for web tutorials. As you can see, there's a great disparity in the performance and the ability to identify the errors in the circuits. We also collected some subjective feedback in the form of Likert results. We asked participants to rate their experience using tangible circuits and web tutorials on a scale of 1 to 5 based on the criteria that you see listed on the right. We found that overall participants found tangible circuits to be easier to use, less frustrating, and less confusing than web tutorials. For more details on these results, I highly encourage you to look at our paper. So just in quick summary, interactive 3D printed interfaces can assist students with BVI, and tangible circuits assist students in understanding circuit structure and identifying circuit components. I'd like to briefly touch on some of the limitations and possibilities for future work in this particular study. The first thing I'd like to highlight is that while our user evaluation principally focused on students with blind and visual impairments, we did employ a universal design approach, meaning we wanted to design a system that would be usable and useful by everybody. And so we would like to perform a study with sighted users and compare those results with visually impaired users to see if there is a similar performance, because having this sort of tool adopted by sighted users would greatly encourage its adoption and wider spread in usage, and therefore hopefully broaden the inclusivity of these classrooms. We'd like to also scale to more complex circuits. Most of the sample circuits that we used were fairly simple and only had one particular functionality, and we'd really like to see if this could scale to larger circuits by possibly taking large circuits, breaking them down into smaller, more modular circuits that could then be connected together, and thus allow this system to work on significantly more complex systems. And then finally, we'd like to find additional use cases for this smartphone capacitive 3D printed technology, possibly for education, because we believe that while it is quite useful for hardware computing, it could have other applications as well. I'd like to take a moment to thank my co-authors, including Emily Whiting, Diane Wu, Shendong Yang. Once again, my name is Josh Urban Davis. This has been Tangible Circuits. If you have any questions, you can email me at the address below or ask me on Twitter, because I think we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you so much, Josh. So I guess we are running out of time, so we don't have like a question section for you, I guess. But great talk, great work. If you have any questions, please reach out to Josh. So I think he will be super happy to answer them. So, okay, so that's our last talk for today, and hope you enjoyed the talks today. And so this is String. Hope we can be seeing each other in person very soon. So, and then I will pass back to Xindong.
All right, thanks, Joe. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. So let's give another round of applause to all the presenters, co-authors, and everybody here participating in this event. Thanks so much, everybody. So I really hope this event can be the start of many, many exciting, future conversations, discussions, and collaborations between the Dartmouth HCI community and all of you. Please send us an email, send us a message on social media if you want to talk to us, and also come visit us after the pandemic. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye. Hey, Phil. Hey, thanks for coming in.